to make something really, really clear. If you are anti-war, you must be anti-spies. And the reason for that is because every single bomb that is dropped on any country on this planet is dropped using intelligence agencies' targeting systems and information and data gathered by them. There are NSA staff and personnel on site, on the ground, with the operational military personnel in the war zones, and they are using the same targeting systems. They call them the real-time targeting gateway, is specifically what they were using. And there's a number of databases and networks that they use, but every single bomb dropped or military operation undertaken is enabled by this intelligence, transnational intelligence cabal. And the targeting that has been brought home to citizens around the world, the targeting of citizens in our home countries around the world, uses that same military targeting process and the same targeting systems against us in our home territory. So our inability to realize the role of the intelligence agencies in the war zones has ultimately resulted in it not just being about them bombing brown people in a foreign country. It is now our ignorance has led to our own demise. So yet again, we see that these so-called oversight mechanisms are just completely inept and irrelevant, unable to perform their tasks. They don't have sufficient mechanisms to hold these agencies to account. And ultimately, when these agencies are running roughshod over the court system in the ways that I've already discussed, they're running roughshod over the political system and the democratic system in the ways that we've already discussed, and they are escaping any oversight mechanism, there is only one remaining option, and that is for people to take it upon themselves to organise and to hold them to account. That's it. We know the media is not going to do it. We know the media has been completely infiltrated by these agencies, which is yet another topic for another show. But if the media won't do it, if the political sphere can't do it, if the courts can't do it, and if oversight mechanisms can't do it, it's on you and me, guys. That's it. It's on you and me and all of us. And as far as I'm concerned, I mean, the greatest polluters on this planet are the military. The greatest perpetuators of war on this planet are obviously the militaries. And every single one of these countries that has a partnership agreement with the global network is facing privatization agendas, austerity agendas, widespread cutting of social services, GMO, poisoning of the food chain, theft and or contamination of the water. The infrastructures are privatized and sold off. Local manufacturing is killed. These mass trade deals are implemented to undercut, again, to enhance corporate power and corporate profits, and to undercut everyday people. And the social and economic outcomes for the nations who are partnered with the global network are consistently getting worse, just like they have in New Zealand. The countries who partner with the global network are destroyed. Ultimately, they're socially and economically destroyed. So it's not even that giving them all of our data and letting them mass surveil us and everything is turning some kind of profit. It's not. It's actually putting us in a worse situation than we've ever been in. So subjugation or becoming a vassal state of the global network is not improving the quality of life for anyone. To the contrary, it's destroying our quality of life. And that is yet another reason that we've got to take them on. They are bleeding their own countries dry. The smear agents rely on social pressure. So they rely on guilt by association and social pressure. So you've got to be the type of person that isn't scared to take an opinion that's contrary to whatever is being publicly pushed or whatever seems to be socially acceptable. You have to be willing to speak the truth because it's the truth, and not speak what everybody else is saying because then you get social credit for saying the same thing as everyone else. You've got to be willing to be that black sheep, you've got to be willing to be the person who maybe looks strange for saying something different than what others believe. You have to care about the truth more than you care about kudos from your peers. And eventually your peers will catch up with you. That's what I've learned. I have come to the conclusion, after years of all of this study and learning everything that I have learned, that those systems have got to go. They have got to go. They have got to be defunded, shut down, got rid of, goodbye, no more. Whether it is by the means that Iowera Jacob Applebaum talked about when he said what we need to do is go to the Utah data storage facility of the NSA and shut off the water, because without water they can't have the cooling systems for the computers that they need to store all of this data that they're stealing from everybody that they're spying on through mass surveillance. Whether it is through a mass movement, whether it's civil disobedience or through a coordinated mass movement, I am not okay. Personally, I am not okay with an international intelligence cabal not only facilitating the murder of millions of people in war zones across the planet, but also targeting an ever-expanding section of society domestically within their own countries. I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with them superseding and watering down and abusing law in the legal process. I'm not okay with them destroying due process and bastardizing the entire judicial system. I'm not okay with them undermining the entire political system and turning it into nothing but a puppet reality TV theater show while they do whatever the hell they want to in the background. I'm not okay with them killing people quickly in wars, and I'm not okay with them killing people slowly domestically in our own countries. And I'm sure as hell not okay with saying nothing about it and pretending that everything's fine and worrying about, what movie I'm going to see this week. I'm not okay with any of that. And if I'm the only person on planet Earth that gives a shit, I'm still going to sit here and say this because I'm not okay with that. And none of us should be okay with that. George Bush, I'm old enough to remember him saying the whole world is a battlefield. That in the war on terror, the whole world is the battlefield. And we just thought, oh yeah, this is like overblown politicians, rhetoric, it's just George W. Bush, he says all kinds of shit. But no, they weren't joking. They weren't joking. Their plan was to have the ability to target in real time any person on this planet, regardless of what country they lived in. And that is what they expanded their systems to have the capacity to be able to do. And that is what they have been doing ever since. And every single year, the problem is getting more widespread and it's getting worse. So in New Zealand already, I predicted it years ago. I said, even in my documentary in 2016, I said, eventually they will expand to target all sectors of society. And in the 2018 State Services Commission inquiry in New Zealand, we discovered that the very companies, the very private intelligence contractors that I'd been naming since 2012 as being involved in targeting citizens for political reasons, were not just targeting journalists, which they were, not just targeting political parties, including my own political party, Internet Party. We're not just targeting dissidents or threats to national security. They had been targeting child abuse victims who had pending claims against the government. They had been targeting earthquake insurance claimants. People whose homes had been destroyed in the Christchurch earthquake, who had pending insurance claims against the government, or specifically against a government agency called Southern Response, were being targeted and spied on by private intelligence agencies engaged by government departments and paid for with taxpayer dollars. So this is what I mean. There are a lot of people, oh, well, Susie's an investigative journalist and activist, so of course they target her. Well, how about these people are insurance claimants? Does that mean they should be targeted? Does that mean child abuse survivors should be targeted? At what point do we decide to stop victim blaming and start looking at those who are doing the targeting and not those who are being targeted? I also wanted to talk tonight about risk. Because risk, there's two types of risk. There's a risk that we face as activists and journalists, and there is the risk, the fear-driven risk that these agencies are obsessed with. Because the greatest irony is that for all of their trying to instill fear in other people, these agents are really scared. They're constantly scared. They live in a constant state of fear. They consider what they do to be risk management. And if you've read an article that I wrote called Glenn Greenwald and the Irrelevance of Electoral Politics, I wrote that in 2014 after Glenn had appeared in New Zealand. And in that, I talk about how one of the principles of business is risk management, and how the intelligence agencies view everything that they do in terms of risk management. The risk, they think of the risk to themselves, and they're constantly obsessed with minimizing risk. So whereas we as activists and journalists think about overcoming fear and taking risks, we consciously take risks. Like, I consciously take risks all the time because the principle is more important to me than trying to personally stay safe. The spies are the opposite. The spies are absolutely fucking petrified of risk. And everything that they do, their obsession with deniability, their obsession with cover, their obsession with creating legends, manufactured falsehoods, lies, is all about trying to minimize the risk to themselves. So the Julian Assanges of this world set aside any fear of personal risk for principle, and the spies set aside principle to minimize personal risk. The other thing I keep getting asked this week is, why do I do what I do? Like, why am I doing this? Well, it's pretty simple from my perspective, really. So I'm acting on principle primarily because, like I said, I'm not okay with what is being done, and I'm not okay with just sitting around and waiting for the continuation of it and for it to continue to get worse at the pace that it has been getting worse. I mean, think about it. It's only been like really 20 years that we've gone from, the shock and awe to full on dystopia. Like, it's actually been less than 20 years. And things are not getting better of their own accord. But the other reason I keep getting told, like, oh, you're so brave, you're taking such a big risk. These agencies put me through hell in New Zealand. I tried to talk, I did as much as I could to explain in my 1-hour documentary in 2016 as to what I'd actually been put through. But they consciously and deliberately terrified, and I'd say petrified is actually the right word. They petrified me on a daily basis through myriad means and ways, and they endangered me over and over and over and over again. And the net result of them doing that to me immunized me to it, because you actually can't live in a state of permanent fear. And at a certain point, you no longer have a fair response to the bullies who are doing that to you. It's like every kid who gets bullied and bullied and bullied and bullied, eventually they have that day where they snap. Well, I definitely got to that. It didn't take me that long, really. I got to that and I started thinking, you know what? I don't care if you guys have billions of dollars and I have nothing. I don't care if you guys have tens of thousands of personnel and I have a ragtag team of 6 people in a citizens media team. I am going to fight you tooth and fucking nail, because what you are doing is immoral and unethical and anti-human, and you have no right to do it, no matter how many laws that you write to suit yourselves, no matter how many times you indemnify yourself retroactively, no matter what justification you come up with, no matter how many politicians you bribe or buy, no matter how much technology you develop. You don't have a natural right to any of it. And we do have natural rights as citizens. We do have natural rights as human beings. And that has to count for more than the artificial power that is seized and monopolized by these agencies. And it's going to take us standing up to them and telling them, no, you cannot keep doing this. Hi, everybody. My name is Susie Dawson. I'm an activist and a journalist. Welcome to the stream. You may be watching on my own YouTube channel right now, or thanks to Restream and the generosity of my friend Graham Elwood, the political vigilante, you may also be watching on his YouTube channel. We're also live on Periscope at periscope.tv/1versus5i. We're live on Facebook Live right now on the 1 versus 5i Facebook page, and also on D Live on DTube. Thank you all for being here. Can you please just let me know that you can hear me okay? I am watching chat on the various social streams, so hi, and just let me know if the sound is coming through, no problem. I'll take it that the many love hearts and clapping emojis that I can see right now means that you can hear me okay. So this series is called opening the five eyes, exposing the spies. And we are broadcasting every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern US time. What we're doing is going through my findings from my journalism over or throughout this decade, really, and examining what the NSA calls the global network. The global network is a transnational cabal of intelligence agencies from over 100 countries on this planet. And we're examining the ways that they spy on us, the ways that they exert social control, the ways that they infiltrate and dominate every aspect of human society. The findings that we're presenting and discussing are a conglomerate of discoveries from the Snowden NSA documents, from the WikiLeaks files, from several WikiLeaks offshoot projects, like, for example, IC Watch, Intelligence Community Watch, which we'll be delving into a lot tonight, and a number of other very credible sources. The findings are based on documents of the intelligence agencies in their own words, the things that they claim themselves to do. And we go through in detail how they're doing it, why it's not okay that they're doing it, and then we try to work together to do something about it. If you don't know about my campaign, which is the One versus 5i campaign, you can go and read about it at number 1 VS number 5 letter I.com, one versus 5i.com. You can also go and follow the @one versus 5i Twitter account, which pumps out relevant info all day, every day. And please go and like One versus 5i on Facebook. Additionally, some of you may know, or you'll learn if you watch the short One versus 5i campaign video on the website, that I'm being represented by international human rights lawyer Craig Tuck, who is also a member of Julian Assange's legal team. I am currently fundraising to fund this campaign in my fight, but also to raise funds to be able to sue the intelligence agencies for the documented breaches of my rights that they have engaged in persecuting me for my journalism and for my activism. So if you would like to donate to help me, to give me the ability to be able to wage that fight against the intelligence agencies in the courts, then our awesome social media team will put the Go Get Funding link for the campaign into the various social media chats. And you can also just hit the donate button at one versus 5i.com. So this stream is a fundraising stream to try to give us the resources to build a really solid movement to take these guys on. So last week we looked at the architecture of the global network. We talked about the 2 eyes, the 3, 4, and 5 eyes, the 7, 9, and 14 eyes, and the 41 and 43 eyes. If you go back on either my own or on Graham Elwood's YouTube channel to last Sunday night, you'll be able to view episode 1. The short videos that you saw at the beginning of this stream are highlight cuts from that stream. So that gives you a little bit of a taste of the types of things that we're talking about here. So the big message from last week that I really want to reiterate is where I said that if you are anti-war, you must be anti-spies, because every bomb that is dropped in every war zone on this planet is facilitated, organized, and processed by the international intelligence agencies. They gather the intelligence that is used for targeting. Their targeting systems are used to set up the capture and kill operations. NSA have staff on the ground with the capture and kill teams in the war zones. And the intelligence agencies, their systems, their technologies, and their processes are what enable war. are what enable targeted killings in war zones around the world. So to be anti-war does mean to be anti-spy. Last week, we also went through the rash of legislation that has been passed around the world, which has enabled these intelligence agencies to spread their tentacles out, not just across war zones, but around countries all around the world. We talked about the war on terror and how George Bush said that the whole world was a battlefield, and how in the NSA's documents we've discovered that they have taken the very same targeting programs that they used in Iraq, and they have extended them so that they can target citizens anywhere in the world, anywhere in this globe. Now, if you've followed my story or any of the happenings in New Zealand, which has had a slew of spying scandals across this decade, then you'll know that in my country, not only were journalists targeted and dissidents targeted and political parties such as Internet Party targeted by spies, but it's been discovered and reported in the public arena that even child abuse survivors who are suing the government for historical state child abuse were also targeted. And not just them, we even discovered that insurance claimants from the Christchurch earthquake were likewise targeted by private intelligence agencies who had been directly hired by government departments. Now, as we've studied the global network, we've seen that any activity that's happening in one of the Five Eyes is happening in all five of them. So we've seen in the UK with the UK #SpyCops campaign that intelligence agents were getting into intimate relationships with activists in the UK and even impregnating them, having children by them, all with fake personas, fake identities. Likewise, we've seen in New Zealand, spy cops, as they're known, these undercover intelligence officers, also entering into intimate relationships with New Zealand activists. So we can see time and again that the legislation that is instituted around the world is a mirror image, like whether it's in Australia or the UK or the USA or Canada or New Zealand, it empowers the spies to do the same things and indemnifies their what should be illegal acts. And then when we look at the immoral practices of the agents of the intelligence agencies, they're likewise a carbon copy around the world. And the reason for that is because these guys all get the same training. They all take the same courses. They get given the same handbooks. We've also seen the integration of all of their intelligence databases. So we have been able to prove that New Zealand counterintelligence information is being directly integrated into the US databases. And the same with the other eyes or the other what's known as partner agencies in the global network. So these guys are so far in bed together that they're basically operating as a single entity. And when they are operating as a single entity, it is a total subversion of the concept of the nation state. They are supposed to act in the interests of their own countries, but what they're doing is acting in the interests of themselves. And they are the ultimate the ultimate manifestation of globalization. They are, like I said, a transnational intelligence cabal. So last week, we also talked a bit about policies and various policies that have been instituted, as well as the legislation. And we also talked about the lack of oversight. So we know that in the US, the intelligence agencies were actually spying on the intelligence oversight committees. We know from the NSA documents that they set up private corporations to fund their projects with in instances where they couldn't get congressional funding for their projects. And we know that they use liaison officers to restrict the flow of information between the agencies and the oversight committees. So when they're operating with no oversight and they're operating with private corporations to fund their projects, and they're operating hand in fist with countries all around the world, they are completely outside of the democratic framework. They are not voted in by the public, and the public can't vote them out. We're told that Trump is a problem, but Trump will be gone in 4 years at least, or less, one way or the other. These intelligence agencies won't be gone in 4 years. They are around for generations, and they control the strategic direction of our societies for generations. And that is why we have to stop them. We also have found in the documents that their customers, because they call themselves a business, they refer to themselves as being a business, the NSA does, and all these partner agencies, their customers are not just government departments. Their customers are not just the nation that they're supposed to serve. Their customers also include private entities. One of the NSA customers we know for a fact is the Federal Reserve Bank of America, which is a private corporation. So tonight, what I want to do is connect for you the pathway between the top level of the global network and all of the organizations and middle layers that data filters down through and up through, going right down to the shady guys on the ground that are actually targeting people. So if you're a targeted journalist or an activist or a dissident or just anybody who's ended up on the shit list of your government for whatever reason, when you start to notice that you're being targeted and there's these dodgy, shady people following you around and photographing you and surveilling you and messing with your life, it's really difficult to know who they are and what the hell they're doing. And it's a really scary experience. And it's only through research of the type that I've been doing and through talking with other targets and gaining knowledge from them that you begin to get some sense of what's actually going on and who's behind it all. However, an amazing development came about a few years ago, and that was when a guy called Mark McGrath, MC McGrath, discovered that the employees of the intelligence agencies worldwide had been documenting who they'd been working for, what operations they were involved in, what programs they worked on, and who their targets were in their curriculum vitaes, and then posting their CVs onto LinkedIn. And MC McGrath did a genius thing. He worked out how to bulk scrape the CV data of intelligence operatives from LinkedIn, create a database of that information. And then when he himself became targeted for having done so, he passed that database to WikiLeaks, and WikiLeaks published it. You can find that database at icwatch.wikileaks.org. It's absolutely remarkable because for the first time, rather than us having to describe what these guys are doing, who they're doing it with, and how they're doing it, now we can show you in their own words, from their own bragging in their CVs, who they were working for, who they were targeting, and how they're doing it. So that's what we're going to do tonight. Tonight, I'm going to bring on a fellow activist and a good friend of mine who, by happenstance, managed to connect with me during the 2017 Internet Party anti-spy bill campaign. And when she connected with me, we realized that she had been experiencing very similar types of targeting to what I had experienced in New Zealand, except she was in the United States. And although we didn't know each other prior at all, the same methods of targeting had been used against both of us, and we had been involved in the same campaigns. So anyone who's followed my work at length would know that I was a co-founder of #TPPA No Way, which was a very famous, worldwide trending campaign against the TPP. Well, Elizabeth Mueller, who I'll be bringing on with me tonight, also worked, but on the United States side, against the passage of the TPP. And sure enough, she was targeted by private intelligence agencies hired by the government, who went to extreme lengths to destabilize and destroy her life in the United States, in tandem at the same time as I was being targeted in New Zealand, and my life was being dismantled piece by these same types of private intelligence goons. So I'll bring her on in about 5 or 10 minutes, but first I wanted to go through a screen a slide that I created for an article that I wrote called They Spy with Their Little Eye. So I'm just going to screen share this and take you through, because it's the best single figure view that I can think of that demonstrates the data flows between the very top layer of the global network all the way down to these goons on the ground that are running around targeting people. So one quick reminder before I get into the slide. We have to be the media on this campaign. There is no media in this world that is going to spread these messages or tell people this information or let them know what's going on. So I need you all to please take to every social network and nook and cranny of the internet and to share the stream and share the 1versus5i.com campaign website so that people can hear about this. Word of mouth is the only way we're going to be able to grow this movement. We have no corporate funding, no backing, no NGO partners, and no mainstream media. So it's on all of us, if you care about what this information I'm giving you, to get out there and tell as many people as you can about it. So hopefully our social media people will link to this article, They Spy with Their Little Eye. But I'm just going to take you through to the screen now and talk you through it. So here we go. So this figure, I created it to describe from a New Zealand perspective the hierarchy of the data flows from the targeters to the targeted. But this will easily translate to any of the NSA partner agencies. So at the very top of the screen, we have the global network. The global network is what the NSA calls their intelligence empire. They refer to it as their global network. The top tier of that empire is USA and marked no foreign nationals, no foreign, which in theory means that only the USA has top-level access to that data. Now, the USA also has network access to the networks, including the hardware of all of their so-called partner agencies. And they group those partner agencies, the partner agencies being the international spy agencies of the countries around the world who they partner with and who they have these data sharing agreements with. So they partner them in little groups. So that's where the Two Eyes comes in, which is there's actually two groups of Two Eyes. There's the US-UK, which is the original intelligence sharing agreement from the 40s. And then there's also the US-Israel Two Eyes. So Israel is getting higher level access to US intelligence data than any of the other English-speaking countries. Then there's the 5 Eyes, 7 Eyes, through to 14 Eyes, 41 Eyes. We talked about that in detail last week, so I'm not going to go through it again. Now, with each of these partner agencies, they have a military partnership agreement, because fundamentally it is the military that is underpinning all of this. And this is one of the key things to understand, is that in the Western world, it is not politicians, it is not parliaments, it is not government that is running the show. It is the military. This is a transnational military dictatorship. The United States is run by the military, not by the president, not by the White House, not by the Congress, not by the Senate. In New Zealand is run by the military. It is not run by the Prime Minister. It is not run by the people you see on TV. It's run by the people you don't see on TV. So this military partnership agreement is what enables the data sharing. And each country has a military partnership with in our case, the Five Eyes, but ultimately with the US and the global network. So in New Zealand, we have two major spy agencies. We have the New Zealand Security Intelligence Services, which is our domestic spy agency. This is basically the equivalent of the FBI. Then we have the Government Communications Security Bureau, which is our international spy agency. And they are roughly the NSA. It's basically New Zealand's NSA. So from the global network, the data is passed through the Five Eyes, which comes from the country that has a military partnership agreement, which then is pulling data from the domestic and the international spy agencies of that country. Then on the next tier, we have something called fusion centers. Fusion centers I've done a lot of writing about in my journalism. If you look at Susie 3D and type fusion center on Twitter, you'll find even more information. Fusion centers are a creation of war. The first fusion centers were in Iraq and in Afghanistan and in wherever US was waging war. Fusion centers fuse data from a variety of data sources. They merge all of that data together, and then they feed that data to their customers. Now, fusion centers don't just use military intelligence data. They also use open source data, but they also use corporate data, private data, and they pull all the data from all these different systems together and then feed them back. Now, these fusion centers have been established post 9/11 by counterterrorism legislation. So almost everything we're going to discuss tonight comes under the so-called umbrella of counterterrorism. But they expand that definition of counterterrorism to mean any threat to national security. And then they expand what a threat to national security is by removing or diluting or changing the definition to what a threat to national security is, as we've seen in the legislation, as we discussed last week. They've been deliberately broadening the scope of what it means to be a threat to national security. But also because in the counterterrorism post 9/11 legislation, they deemed critical infrastructure to be a part of the state, and then they decided that private corporations were critical infrastructure. So all of a sudden, banks and transport companies and credit card companies and these types of things, telecoms companies, have been brought under the umbrella of the state, which means that to be a threat to the state, you just have to be a threat to its critical infrastructure. So if you're a threat to a bank, or you're, for example, an anti-TPP activist, then next thing you know, you're literally branded a threat to national security, and all of this military counter-terror apparatus is used to target you. So the fusion centers are pulling information from government departments and from domestic police intelligence units and from corporate entities. And they are merging that and they're feeding it up to the nation's, states, domestic and international spy agencies, which is then pushing it to Five Eye, which is then pushing it to the global network. So they're also passing information down. So these arrows are data flows, right? So what I'm showing here is that data comes down into the fusion center, but it also goes up. So it goes up to the global network and down from the global network. So as I just discussed, the corporate entities are deemed part of the critical infrastructure, which is how they're brought into this big data scam. And the government departments have been justifying the spying on their own citizens as being about risk management. And this is a term that you see all the time. Now, in the case of the big spy scandals that I've studied, where we've literally got, like we've seen reporting on the invoices of government departments hiring private intelligence to target people on the ground, they have been literally putting it on the general ledger as a security expense. And they justify the security expenditure as being risk management. So therefore, the targeting of citizens around the world who oppose some government policy or whatever government activity, we are being deemed a risk. We're being deemed a risk either to the government or to the police and security state or to corporate entities. And then these military inventions, these fusion centers, are trading in our data and pushing them up through the military networks. So the fusion centers, I should mention, although they started in Iraq and Afghanistan, they were propagated right across the domestic homelands of the Western world. So there are fusion centers right across the US, but there's also international fusion centers. So this is a military initiative that has been brought to the homeland, which is a total violation, obviously, of human rights and of countless historical principles. So then the domestic police intelligence units and the government departments and corporate entities, they don't like to do dirty work themselves. So what they do is they hire private intelligence and private security contractors. And those contractors are the ones that actually have teams of people that go and stalk and target and interfere with and sabotage and destroy the lives of whoever is deemed to be a risk to the state. They are literally billing the government. So the government's identifying who should be targeted, and then these are the goons that are going and doing it. Now, when you look at their websites and you read their promotional material, you discover that they openly brag about not just the fact that they work for corporations and work for domestic police intelligence units and work for government departments, but they also brag about having global customers. They have global customers that are foreign governments, and they have global customers that are commercial entities. So in New Zealand, if you piss off Saudi Arabia or some God knows who government overseas, that government can independently, or a company or a corporation in that country can independently engage these private intelligence and private security companies to come and fuck your life up, to put it nicely. So this is and then of course pushing it back the other way, up the waterfall, information that is gathered by these private security and private intelligence companies about you can be pushed back to their global customers, governmental or commercial, but also they try to pin you with anything they can, and then they report that back to your domestic police intelligence units, to your domestic government departments and corporate entities. And that's then again going up through the fusion centers. So the targeting directives are coming down the waterfall, and the instructions to these companies to target you. And then the information that they gather is going back up the waterfall, all the way back up into the global network. So a question that I used to get asked a lot when I would describe how I was being stalked and surveilled and interfered with in New Zealand is I would get told, like, I would get asked, is it the CIA? Does the CIA come to New Zealand to target you? And I would explain to people, it doesn't have to be the CIA. The CIA don't have to send agents to New Zealand to target someone they don't like there. All the CIA does is extract data from the global network that's relevant to their targets. And that data isn't collected by the CIA necessarily. It can be collected by some local intelligence security firm in New Zealand who is pushing that data back up through these data sharing agreements all the way to overseas. So that's the best depiction that I can give you about how this high-level military international intelligence cabal is able to reach out and target and operate against normal, common, everyday citizens who have pissed someone in power off somewhere along the way. This is how they're connected. through that screen. So like I said, that slide I was just showing you is from my article, They Spy with Their Little Eye. If you put quotation marks around that and web search it, you'll be able to find that whole article. There's a lot of information in there. So now that you've seen the structure of the interconnectivity between the very top level international military entities and the nation state entities and the corporate and private entities and the goons on the ground, as we call them, what we're going to do is we're going to spend the rest of the stream examining what these private and government intelligence agencies have been bragging about having engaged in, who they've been targeting their, for, who they've been working for, what projects they've been doing. And to do that, I'm going to bring on my friend, Elizabeth Mueller. Elizabeth is a Stop TPP activist. She's a researcher, and she has been a target of private and governmental intelligence services in the United States of America because of the veracity of her work. Elizabeth, are you here with me?
Yes. Hi, Susie. Give me 1 second.
Hi.
Hi.
If you just want to, oh, cool. There's your camera. Great job.
I'm wearing my Julian Assange t-shirt.
Oh, your Julian Assange t-shirt. Oh my God.
Yes. First they came for Assange.
That is so cool. Okay, Elizabeth.
Yes.
I know you have put together an amazing slideshow for us tonight, an amazing presentation. Do you want to just tell us a little bit about your journey of delving into the IC Watch files and how you dug up this information and what you've been doing with it?
Hi, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Mueller, and as everyone said, I'm an activist and also a researcher. And it's so hard to follow you, Susie, because you speak so eloquently about all of this. So I hope that I can speak coherently. But and you've also said most of my story, but basically, I was a Stop TPP activist, and I was following also the Kim.com story because that has to do with SOPA, and that was part of the TPP issue. And I just happened to find a link in my Twitter with you in it. And I watched the first anti-spy bill event that you did with Kim.com. And so that just, I all these horrible things were happening in my life, but I just thought I was having really bad luck. I just thought my whole life had just turned into a nightmare, and I didn't really understand why. I had suspicions, but I thought, I'm not an important person, really. I mean, I'm just, I did lead a group of 15,000 people to call Congress daily, but, I'm used to hearing about the history of COINTELPRO, where it's like, Martin Luther King got targeted or something like that. And I'm thinking, I'm just a suburban female activist. Nobody would really care about me. So maybe I'm just, reading too much into all of these weird things that were happening. But things became so egregious where the targeting just became very obvious. And when I saw your video and you started talking about it, it gave me chills, because I realized, oh my God, you're describing everything that's been happening to me in the last decade. And, it was like being sucked backwards in a tunnel. And so I contacted you, and I remember saying to you, hi, and you were running for prime minister at the time, so I didn't even know if you'd respond to me. Again, I'm feeling like I'm just a nobody. And I think I said something to you like, they wouldn't break pipes or anything like that in a house or anything. And you said, well, actually, you should watch. I don't remember if you referred me to the person of interest video or if I got curious, but I found your person of interest video, and you said, why, yes, people have reported incidents like this. And so anyway, I'm trying to condense the story. It's a very long journey that I went on. But basically, after I watched your video, I was just horrified about what happened to you and what are the similarities to my life. And from then on, I became someone that was determined, really determined, to find out who these people were and what I could possibly do to stop them and to expose them, frankly. So that's my journey. I'm
So
trying to
just
think.
to recap,
Yeah.
so you're having these crazy experiences. You're being stalked by people you have no idea who they are, what the hell they're doing to you, or why. And then you discover that someone who's been involved in exactly the same types of activism as you, but is in a totally different geographical location, who you don't personally know, is reporting having exactly the same experiences as what you're going through, right? So
Exactly.
that in itself is really validating. It's a really validating experience to discover that this is happening to someone else, and that you're not crazy, you're not dreaming it up, but actually this is a methodology that's being applied around the world to many people. But then there's the next step, and the next step is where not only is it being validated for you by a fellow target, but now you're discovering evidence from the people themselves who've been targeting
Yes.
activists. So tell us a bit about that. Tell us about you finding the Icy Watch database, and about how you came across the information that you're about to give us in the presentation you're about to give us.
Okay, I'm trying to recall because I've been on such a long journey and every day something new happens. But I think you may have put it in an article or made a reference to it, and I thought, oh, this is really interesting. You can just do little search words at the top. I'm really curious about certain things, and I think one of the first things that I put in there was, oh, are you there? It just froze. Stop video. Are you there?
It's fine. I'm fine. You keep going.
Oh, okay. Okay. Sorry about that. So, I think I put in surveillance role player, and I couldn't believe how many hits I got. And so, I started realizing that there were search terms that I could look up in articles that I'd read about with targeting, even though in the beginning, I didn't know what to call a lot of these things. So, anyway, I just started learning more and more about IC Watch, and realizing that that this could be the key to going from, feeling like I always have to explain to people in my surroundings like what's really happening. And I felt I actually was fortunate because I knew some people who had some military experience. So when I talked about it eventually, I did feel supported by other activists and other people who had some knowledge. But um, I was getting isolated in my day-to-day life with what these groups were doing to target me, and it was extremely validating and healing for me to realize that um, this is not my imagination. This is very real. There are targeting programs. There are people that are working in teams. They do go out and take your picture. They do go out and try to destroy your property. They do break in. They do, etc. And I have the proof now, so I can no longer fear what they try to do to us, which is what they try to do is make us all feel like we're conspiracy theorists, right? Like that's the thing that they always want to do.
So let's blow that apart. I'm keen
Right,
to completely blow it apart, because once you see
right,
these slides, nobody can ever call this conspiracy theory again.
right. It's
So
conspiracy fact.
why don't you share screen and get started on taking us through this?
Okay, I'm a little new at Zoom. Bear with me, and please, Susie, speak with me as we go through this because I'm sure you'll have a lot of wonderful things to add as we go along. Okay, let's see. Share and okay,
Desktop one.
desktop one,
Mm-hmm. And
and
share
then
screen.
share. Did it? What happened?
No, that is your desktop. You need to open your file
Okay, open my file. I'm so sorry, everyone. Yes.
and full screen it.
Okay, full screen. I may need some technical help. I apologize. Okay. Um, share.
Just the green button on your keynote.
Okay. Let's see. Desktop.
Hit the green, honey. Hit the green button on your keynote, on the top left of your keynote.
Top
A
left.
green circle, so that you can full screen your.
I am so sorry.
It's all right. You
I
have
knew
a
that was gonna happen. I knew.
you have
Okay.
a breathe. You have a red circle, an orange circle, and a green circle on the top left of the program. Hit the green circle.
Okay. Green circle. Yes.
Bingo. There we go.
Okay,
Nice.
okay, thank you. I don't know if you can see me. I was going to put on my glasses because some of these are hard to read without them. But anyway, um, so okay, what do we have first? The intelligence cycle. I was really impressed. I started watching a lot of videos about that MC McGrath put up, who is the person, one of the people at IC Watch who originally created all of this database of CVs. And what he said was there's a lot of open source information out there. And what I started doing is Googling handbooks. And he certainly was right. There are a lot of handbooks out there. So if anyone else wants to do research, definitely start Googling those military handbooks. But anyway, I found this. I thought it was a good way to start. This isn't part of IC Watch, but it's called the intelligence cycle. And let me see. If I do play, will this, let's see. Okay. Can you still see it?
Yes, we can see it. Totally fine.
Okay. So anyway, this shows you how, I mean, it's mind blowing how many people are involved in targeting one individual. And it's quite terrifying, actually, that they have, I mean, it's like a full scale military operation. They have planning and supervising is the outer ring. They have the groups that go around and there's somebody directing these operations. They can be psychological operations. They can be, physically breaking in operations. They can be sort of smearing people and doing, or stalking their mail, etc., which we'll get into. And then what they do is it's called the collect. So it's like if they break into your house or something, they report back what they found, or if they break into your car, what did they find? Or if they put in cameras, they want to collect information and they want to always be learning more and more and more about you and how to control you, basically. Then the information gets processed. I guess it gets disseminated. It's disseminating, and they use it and they disseminate it back to the team. And they just keep going in circles, I guess, and performing missions over and over and over again. And I can really speak to this because when you're in the middle of being targeted, you will have at least I've spoken to a lot of activists and I've had the experience where it's not just like you have one of these incidents like once every 3 months or something. It can be very constant and you'll have people all day long pestering you in all different ways. So, okay. Anything you want to say about that, Susie?
No, I think you're doing fine.
Okay, next. Intelligence cycle using IPB, intelligence preparation of the battlefield. Again, you can just look this over really quickly. It just shows you more about how just in depth this whole process is. And, there's always this emphasis on the enemy. One thing that I found really striking, although I think I took this out of my little presentation because I had so many slides, but they're always referring to people as the enemy, and it's not just a foreign enemy anymore, it's domestic enemy. We're always enemies. So we're always, it seems, being surveilled and considered guilty before proven innocent for, I guess, to line their pockets or whatever it is they're doing. But so, okay, next. Goals of the security agencies. This is in their own words. They basically want to undermine adversaries' legitimacy and credibility. So that's one of their goals. They really want you to be discredited. They will physically and psychologically isolate their adversaries from the relevant populations. Sorry, I'm going to move this little box.
And from their external supporters.
Supporters, which is really critical. I mean, one of the things that they do is they hate your finances and they try to make you as poor as possible. And I mean, I'm just, again, speaking from my own experience, but I've compared notes with other people, and they also put you in positions where, particularly with surveillance role players, where really weird, crazy, wacky things are happening. And it's very hard to report it, either to, like, if it's happening at work, you can't, it's very hard to say, look, I think there's this organized effort to make me look bad, because people are just not used to understanding that the military actually does do this. They actually do target people and will try to do this. Oops, I went too far. How do I get back? Let me try that. Okay. They seek to boost their own legitimacy and credibility to exercise authority over the same population. What I think that's about is more like the media. They have a heavy influence on the media. We'll see one of the slides I'll show you, and we'll talk about that. Employ subversion, coercion, attrition, and exhaust to erode an adversary's power, influence, and will to exercise political authority over relevant populations. So basically, they perceive certain people, I guess, as having influence, and they don't want you to have influence. They want to be the influence. So it has nothing to do with you being a bad person or a terrorist. It's just that they don't like you for political reasons. Use political, psychological, and economic methods to achieve their goals, which I addressed. Creating and maintaining an enduring, functioning state requires the government to be legitimate in the eyes of the population. And then I added, even if the state is using illegitimate means to achieve its goals. So this is just sort of a primer. Let's keep going. Okay, what is a PSYOP? PSYOP, normally interrogation elements coordinate with PSYOP elements to maintain information concerning the motivational factors and cultural value systems of the individuals to be interrogated. PSYOP units, as a part of their normal operations, develop detailed analysis concerning psychological and cultural factors of friendly and hostile elements and so forth. And what they really are doing is they study you and they try to figure out what will upset you and what will harm you. And that's pretty much what I've learned, I think, about these PSYOPs. Okay, and then finally, I just threw this in here. It's probably not something we really need to focus on, but it's just talks about how they rate you, instructions for assessing sources. They'll come in and basically people will invade your life and you won't really know who they are, but they could pose as clients to your work. They could show up as a new friend. They could ask you out on a date, whatever it is. And they will ask you questions. And then they're always, I guess, supposed to evaluate you based on these sort of repetitious questions and so forth. Okay, sorry, I put in a little cat meme. I don't even know what that's there. I'm wondering if this is this may be my, you know what? I'm wondering if this is my,
That's so good. Let's just work through it anyway. So what you're doing now is you're starting to get into some of the keywords that you searched in IC Watch, and then we're going to look and see what these people who brag about doing this for a living have to say about this.
Yes, I do think it's important. Let me just fix one thing. I'm going to just turn the camera off for 1 minute and stop share. I just want to make sure I have the right one because I put some really great stuff in at the last minute. So I apologize, everyone. I am not as technologically savvy as everybody else. Okay, escape. Jamie. Okay, give me 1 second. Stop share. Okay. Why is it not showing up? Okay.
Okay, well, while Elizabeth sorts out her version, the correct version of her presentation, I just want to say thank you to the dozens and dozens of people who are live tweeting the stream right now. I can see your tweets going out. It's absolutely phenomenal. I can see hundreds and hundreds of comments in the YouTube chats in both channels. Thank you so much. We have an amazing social media team, an all volunteer media team active across all the different social media platforms right now, engaging people. And also, I always forget to do this on our streams. I get so engaged in the content and in the messages that I'm trying to pass to everyone and the information I'm trying to get out to everybody that I always forget to say, please donate and support the campaign. If you can't donate, which many people can't in the current economic climate, please just promote the website, promote the donation link, promote the streams, and let people know that this exists, that this movement exists. Let them know why it's important and ask them to back this campaign. Because if we can get some successful suits going against these guys, we can really make them think twice and have some serious impact, maybe even set some really important legal precedents to fight back against these networks of agents who have been destabilizing our civil society across the Western world, but I mean, with 100 partner agencies across most of the world, they have the capacity to commit these crimes against citizens, against around most of this planet. And as I've said in previous videos, that's not okay with me. And that's why I've dedicated my life to fighting back against them, because I feel that we have to do it. We have to do it. We can't just get to the point where this total global surveillance state that we live in is able to actively destroy anybody who challenges it. We must stand up against it, and we must do it together. We are strong together. With hundreds of us and thousands of us working together, we are much stronger than when we're isolated as individual targets or wherever we happen to be around the world. Okay, so I am really excited and keen to get into the rest of this presentation, because the programs and the targets that are named in the slides that you're about to see will absolutely blow your mind. When I saw it myself, when I saw this presentation yesterday, I just said to Elizabeth, this is dynamite, epic, next level stuff. Elizabeth, how are you going? Have you got the correct file?
I have my tech genius helping me, and we're almost there. I'll be right there. Thank you. Give me one sec.
Okay, awesome. Also, once Elizabeth has finished giving her presentation, which I think will take probably about the next 45 minutes, then in the final hour of this stream, we will take questions from audiences across the various networks. So if you have a burning question for myself or for Elizabeth, or something you want to ask about any of my reporting or about this campaign, please tag me in your question, and I'll try to get back through the tags and answer as many questions as possible. So these streams are roughly about 3 hours. We do 2 hours of sharing info with you and research and findings, and then the last hour we do Q&A with audience. So think about what you'd like to ask us and tag me in your questions, and I will answer as many as I can. Cool, looks like you're good to go. You just need to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry about that. Sorry, you guys.
That's cool. And now you just want to full screen it again? Hit that green button and full screen.
Okay, full screen. New
green
share.
Circle,
green,
top left.
Green circle. Is that it?
That's it.
Please
okay, let's do this.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, so we looked at these, okay, so media exploitation.
Just back it up and just explain that we're now looking at IC Watch records.
Yes, so now we're looking at
Intelligence Community Watch.
Yes, so now we're
to the next slide.
Okay, absolutely. So here we go. This is Stephen. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, Cardus, and he is a senior digital forensics examiner, cybersecurity analyst, media exploitation medics analyst. What I found really interesting about this particular slide is that, well, basically when I put media into the top search, over 20,000 hits showed up. And what this really told me, I didn't put in all of my slides. I think another time we can really focus on media. But the main point that I want everyone to see is just that these security agencies see the media as a something to exploit. So
let's just go over this again. So media exploitation is what is written here in this guy's CV, right?
Yes. And what I found when I was looking through all of these different CVs is that you see so many people from security agencies who are connected to CNN and ABC and NBC and CBS and the New York Times and certainly the Washington Post. And originally when I did this, I had like 150 slides, and I was thinking maybe we could just do another presentation at some point about media alone. But I just want people to understand that the security agencies are heavily, heavily embedded in our media, our mainstream media, our television, corporate news, and they are basically, yeah, the people that are either approving the content or writing the content or showing up as the experts. And I would love at some point if somebody wants to do an analysis of a breakdown of how many people are actually working, say, at the New York Times versus how many people in the security agencies, and just this database alone. Because remember, this is not a database of all security agents everywhere on the planet. This is just a small selection of people that put their CVs on LinkedIn. So anyway, I don't know if you wanted to talk more about this, but I can keep going if you'd like.
Let's move through it because there's a lot to cover.
Okay, fusion centers. You were talking about those earlier. This is Richard Pyle. He is from Washington. He served as a professor of political science while teaching at security policy. So a lot of these people will be embedded in our universities. He's an
his previous, that was his current role at the time of his CV, but his previous, immediately prior to being a professor of political sciences at a university, he was in fact an instructor of intelligence analysis to various organizations within the intelligence community, including Department of Homeland Security, ICE, NSA, FBI, DEA, EPA, and fusion centers and state police.
Yes, I mean, it's astounding how many different different parts of the security apparatus, I don't know what to call it, network, is involved in these targeting programs. So the fusion centers appear to be where a lot of this information is gathered and disseminated about people that they are interested in. Here, finding persons of interest in using social media and fusion centers. So here, we have someone who assists in background investigations through query law enforcement databases and social media platforms. So everyone should be very well aware, not like we didn't suspect it already, but they're really trolling our social media constantly and looking for people that they think are behaving badly. And
so specifically, assisting in background investigations through querying law enforcement databases and social media platforms for persons of interest.
So you can become a person of interest if you post the wrong cat meme, which I found out the hard way. And if you
responsible for monitoring social media on active law enforcement and homeland security situations.
Yes, and she also, let's see, if you go down there, intelligence maps of telephone toll information for stakeholders, one of which led to a conviction of 25 years. So they're not joking. Like, they're not just looking to, maybe ban your account for a little while. They're really hoping to prosecute people. So I don't know if you want me to read everything that I highlighted or if you guys can just all read it yourselves, but basically this slide just shows you that the fusion centers are constantly watching over our social media and looking for people who are stepping out of line, basically.
Gained an understanding of how the intelligence process cycle in organizations produce actionable intelligence products and how fusion centers contribute to the process.
Yes. Okay, we'll keep going. Let's see. FBI's Terrorist Screening Center, watch lists, fusion center, intelligence agency points of contact, and matters pertaining to encounters with watch listed known or suspected terrorists.
Now, let's remember that the watch list has, 3 million names on it, I believe. Now, do you think there's 3 million terrorists? No, that's 3 million potential threats to national security. Threats to national security being threats to critical infrastructure being banks, telcos, anybody who has some stake in this. I know people don't like using the word globalization because they think it's politically loaded, but this is literally what globalization is. This transnational intelligence cabal, it's data sharing across countries all around the world. This is, I can't think of any better example of globalization. But sorry, continue.
Oh, that's okay. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so as a tactical operations center specialist, what did Lucas Martinez, who yet again then became enrolled in a college and went back to university, what did he get up to?
He, supports and maintains a 24/7 operation on counterterrorism by utilizing multiple databases. Remember, it's always about the databases to store and retrieve personal and intelligence-derived information on subjects of international and domestic terrorism. It's like everyone's a domestic terrorist, I swear, when you start looking through all of these CVs. In the FBI's terrorist screening center. Well, I didn't even know there was a terrorist screening center. Let's see, enters detailed encounter management data to automated, sorry, this is very small writing, automated record keeping systems and databases concerning both electronic and telephonic service and so forth. So basically, I just put this up here so that you can see, once again, there really are things called fusion centers, and they really are constantly looking at everyone's information. And a huge part of it is just, it seems like an excuse to me to employ just, a ridiculous number of people to do silly stuff. But anyway, let's see, here we go again, developed technology. Fusion centers develop suspicious activity reporting for the entire United States. So this guy's bragging on his CV that he's developed a program. And what I would love to know is, what is the criteria for somebody to become a terrorist on a terrorist watch list? I mean, what do you have to do? Do you have to just be a suburban female in a small college town that posts her opinions and cat memes, or what has to happen? But anyway, sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
You simply have to be deemed as a threat to critical infrastructure, which means you have to be in opposition to any policy that they have. And given that their policies are broadly to advance the military industrial complex and to shore up the economic supremacy of the 1% versus the 99%, then really what we're seeing is that the 99% are the targets.
Yeah. So these are fusion centers. They really exist, and that's pretty much why I put them in there. Oh, this is my favorite. Let's see. Fusion Center in Florida. Fusion Center in Pensacola, Florida participates in outgoing recruitment of, I'm trying to see if this is the one. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but there was one that's coming up where, I don't think this is the one actually, but I guess there will be another slide coming up that talks about how they are, again, surveilling people domestically. And sorry, this writing is so small. I really wish I had blown this up a little bit. But anyway, I'll just move on to the next slide. I just want you to know that fusion centers are very real. And oh, did you just blow that up yourself?
No, I didn't actually, but maybe it just zoomed in. That's all right. Okay, where are we at now? You need to scroll up.
Okay, so let's see, scroll up. How do I do that?
Aha! Social media analyst, currently employed as a part-time social media analyst. We create social media profiles on persons of interest for investigative purposes.
Yes. Are you looking at Maximino? Is
Correct.
this the right? Okay. I think mine just sort of zoomed in a little bit, but yes, currently employed as a part-time social media analyst. We create social media profiles on persons of interest to investigate for purposes. So it's like, what is going on here? Is half our country investigating the other half of the country through Facebook and Twitter? I'm just wondering how many people they've employed to do this useless work, or that's my opinion. But let's see. Okay, here's one. Utilizes biometric information to locate persons of interest, perform biometric enrollments at designed ports of entry, capture biometrics utilizing facial recognition, iris, and fingerprint scanners. So really, no one can escape. It doesn't matter if you're not on social media and you decide maybe you don't want to carry your phone. They're going to still get you with your biometrics. In fact, where I live, they, a couple of years ago, were doing biometrics through the driver's licenses. And every time I would smile, they'd tell me, no, you have to retake that picture. And I said, why? And they said, it's for biometrics. So that's just a little aside. Okay, now we get into, because I went through a whole period of time where it was very hard to describe to people, like, yes, I've heard of these programs and I think they target people. And then you hear about targeted individuals. Well, there actually are.
This is literally the language that they're using is targeted individuals. So here, Robert Flynn says, I performed analysis in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, in support of joint interagency task force on high-value targets and individuals, conducted training of U.S. Army military and civilian personnel in the use of advanced analytical tools and techniques used to track and target individuals of interest, conducted research analysis and blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
So,
and so
it is the language. The targeted individuals is the language of the intelligence community. It's not the language of victims.
Yes, and it's amazing. You'll find as you go along the kind of sanitized language that they use to justify what they're doing. They're not stalking someone, they're just targeting someone. They're not breaking into someone's house, they're just doing surreptitious entry. So
Okay, let's keep going because
okay.
I really want to
Okay.
get to
Okay, this is more targeting.
live.
We'll skip this.
Yeah.
I don't think, let's see. Okay, human. Okay, more targeting. Let's see, anything interesting here? It's just more, I just wanted to show, yes, targeting really exists. Target office of primary interest. Okay, human. Okay, human. Human was a term I had to learn too. And that means that they actually assign human beings to, I guess, come into your life and stalk you.
Right, so human is what the CIA does. It's also what these private intelligence and security companies do, where they're physically putting somebody into your orbit, into your life. SIGINT is, of course, what the NSA does in the signals intelligence.
Yes. So now, let's see, going down here, human. Let's see. Let me ask you a quick question. Is there a way it's suddenly increased in size for me, so I only see half of my slide, I don't see the top? Is there a way to...
You just use your arrow keys to scroll up.
Okay, scroll up. No, it's not working.
You'll need to click on the slide and then scroll up, or you should have a scroll bar.
Let's see. That's weird. Okay, sorry about this, you guys. Okay, well, this is 6 years of experience in intelligence analysis and human targeting. I just thought this was interesting because you can take all these courses in targeting, and I was even thinking I'd want to take one myself so I could learn about what they're doing. Psychological operations. I find that just about every single targeting venture has to do with psychological operations. And so this is sort of from one of their manuals, and they always talk about...
You can see there as they talk about the phases. So phase one is they have a preparation phase before they even begin doing this to you. And then they plan their initial contact with you. And then they plan the infiltration that they're going to undertake and to gain intelligence about the organization, or in your case, your Stop TPP call team. So this is something that's very carefully planned. Okay.
Now this, I feel, I took this from your Twitter page, and I said, this is the kind of thing that it's like, is this a psychological operation? Are these the kinds of things where, because these are the kinds of things that happen. People have come home and they find...
So just to give some context to that is the initials of my children written in blood on my elevator wall. So we had a leak spring in our building, and then we had a bunch of building contractors come in and out for a period of a couple of days. And somewhere in that foot traffic, I got into the elevator and found this. So absolutely, that was a psychological operation.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And it speaks to a lot of the things that you had made references to, where, and I know that I've had experiences with where people are coming in and displacing things like your underwear, or cutting things up, or moving around things, or making you end up being a subject of repeated break-ins, but they don't physically steal something specific. They just do little strange things, or they injure your house all the time. So you're either spending a lot of money in repairs, or you're constantly feeling violated. Okay. PSYOP, highlighted accomplishments for the execution of the only deliberate plan for positioning PSYOPs forces in Louisiana for Hurricane Katrina. Okay, I thought this was really interesting. What are they doing, PSYOPs in Louisiana, for the Hurricane Katrina? Like, why haven't those people
that been... That is extremely interesting.
Yes. So now we get into it, people.
Here we go. A major battalion's operations officer, military information support operations in a hurricane zone.
I mean, these people are victims already of having their whole lives destroyed by floods, and why is the military going down there and doing psychological operations? And when you go back and you refer to what their goals are of discrediting people and making them feel, isolated, and I mean, these are people that needed support. What justification could you possibly have for doing a PSYOP during the Katrina? I don't even understand that. So I'd love I'd love for there to be an open investigation for that. But anyway, so moving along. Okay, this is my favorite. It's my favorite because I had the experience of sometimes you try to tell people like, look, I think people are breaking into my house. And in fact, I documented at least 8 break-ins in about a 2-month period. And, it's very hard for people to conceptualize like, wait, you're trying to say that there are people that systematically break into your house? And you have to even question yourself and be like, oh, yeah, it's looking like it. Well, now we have the proof, Susie. It's called, apparently I found an article, they can call it either a black bag job or surreptitious entry. And this is from an article I found. It's called The CIA's New Black Bag is Digital. When the NSA can't break into your computer, these guys break into your house. Now, this particular article was about going in and breaking into people's computer networks and stuff like that. But still, we get into it, and here we go. So then I took that article and I started putting in surreptitious entry to see if anything would pop up. And sure enough, a whole bunch of things did. So this person is, what is this person? Contact instructor, and he does planned, organized, and conducted technical surveillance, including vehicular and foot surveillance. What's he doing with vehicular surveillance? Like, is he going in people's cars? Surreptitious entry. So now that we know the definition of surreptitious entry, it's appearing as though they're doing, it says covert camera installation. So it looks like possibly these people are going into people's homes and installing cameras without other people knowing, or possibly going into their cars and doing that for surveillance purposes. And
right. So we talked about this a little bit last week, and that's that in New Zealand, they passed legislation to enable them to perform domestic visual surveillance. So yet again, this is their term for planting cameras inside your house to film you inside your domestic dwelling. They call it domestic visual surveillance. Now, as if that isn't Orwellian enough, I mean, literally Orwellian, they then made it so that they could do it without a warrant. And then that they could use the material that they gained from doing it without a warrant to apply for a warrant. So they're making it legal after they've already performed the surveillance inside your domestic dwelling.
Didn't they just recently find out that there was a spy agency that had planted cameras in the Ecuadorian bathroom? I mean,
absolutely.
Some of these. And so,
absolutely.
Yeah, Julian Assange was in the Ecuadorian embassy, and an article just came out that, it wasn't enough. They put it in the women's bathroom. I mean, Julian Assange is not a woman, so what are they really trying to see in a women's bathroom?
Absolutely. And the legislation in New Zealand around domestic visual surveillance doesn't specify what rooms of the home that they can or cannot put it in. So right. Yes, it can be in your toilet, it can be in your bathroom, it can be anywhere they like inside your house without a warrant.
Yes. I mean, I think it's just disgusting. And when you hear, like you and I have discussed, it seems like there are a lot of women in particular who tend to have this kind of constant harassing, surveillance where everyone's always following us around. I mean, not that the men don't either, but it seems like it's constant. And it just seems like these people are a bunch of perverts, to be honest with you. Okay. Let's see. Senior counterintelligence agent, close access team lead. Okay, this guy's a lead. Vulnerability assessments and physical security. Again, here we go. Surreptitious entry provides physical and technical surveillance reconnaissance. Surreptitious entry, human exploitation. I looked at that and I said, what is human exploitation? That's kind of a weird term. And then let's see, did I put my slide in about that? No, if I did, well, here it is. Department of the Air Force and Navy have limited human collection ability. So basically, they have teams, and I just wanted to know more about that, but it just seems like, again, they're just basically there to violate our rights. Going back, we already looked at that one. I think that may be similar. Okay. Yeah, and it's another one referencing, I like this one because it has vehicle entry. Like he's just saying, like, I was in your vehicle. And this is particularly disturbing for me because I've had multiple instance where, in fact, I'm without a car right now because my car was, I think, most likely destroyed, but I was having constant damage to my car. And sometimes the damage to my car was potentially life-threatening. So I don't
And
like.
this, I've got to say that that is a consistent theme across all of the targets.
Yes.
So I can speak about half a dozen cases that I know of in New Zealand where vehicles have been tampered with. My vehicle was tampered with repeatedly. I had a car fire at one point because of tampering. I had them constantly threaten me with other vehicles when I was in transit. I was boxed in by vehicles. I was forced off the road, or nearly forced off the road. They attempted to force me off the road in vehicles. My car tires were repeatedly punctured. Other activists have had their car tires, the air let out of them, and or puncturing of car tires, and or interference with brake lines. Absolutely, they go after your vehicles without any shadow of a doubt.
Yes, I mean, not to like plug my video, but I did make a YouTube video. It's like the only other video I've made because I always have stage fright. But anyway, I made this video and I had 4 flat tires in 4 different rental cars on 2 different coasts in 4 consecutive weeks. And this was right after someone was taking my picture with like a zoom lens and harassing me. So I'm very upset to know that security agencies think that they have a right to enter my car without me being there and to do
And
things.
then that they brag about having done so on their CV so that they can get their next job targeting somebody else.
Oh, it gets worse. Look at this. Classes. They take classes on it. Look, topics will be covered. Subtle mechanic entry overview. Don't you love the language that they use? Lock picking and locking mechanism bypass. Pin into, I mean, these are not locksmiths. You know, what are we, I mean, do we have any human rights at all? I don't understand. I mean, what would these people do if, say, they entered your house or your car? Well, it would be hard to do in your car, but like, say someone enters your house and you're not expecting them and people have a right to defend themselves. I mean, have any of these people been hurt? I don't understand how they can just get into, I guess they have so much surveillance that's a rare occurrence, but you know, what if somebody left a child behind or something? It seems sick that these people are allowed to do this. Okay. And then finally, there's also a counter surreptitious entry course, which I would like to take actually. But anyway, that's no, that's just basically how to counter these people breaking into your house. But I guess they're so paranoid, they know that they're doing all this horrible stuff. I guess they have to learn how the antidote so it doesn't happen to them too. It looks like they're paranoid of the same thing. You know, they can dish it out, but they can't take it. You know, they're fine with breaking into other people's houses, but they want to make sure it doesn't happen to them. Okay, here's another one. This was sourced from Indeed, and this was an ad that I found. I started looking up advertisements to see, you know, is this a really thing? And here, this one, they call it conduct intrusions.
I think we need to explain about surveillance role playing and what it is really important.
Okay, that's coming down here. I'm almost there. Let's see. Well, do you want to skip this? This is the mail covers. John Kiriakou was talking about how they can tamper with your mail without a warrant. You can see that at the end. And here are a bunch of CVs where it's mail covers and mail covers, mail covers. Oh, here's one, medical records. They get to go through your medical records. Why would they want to go through your medical records? What would they be doing with your medical records? That's disturbing. Okay, here we go. So I started out with the WikiLeaks global intelligence files, and I looked up, you know, surveillance role player. Okay, so this was in the global intelligence files, an ad for that. There again, all of these ads for surveillance role players. Okay, so do you want to tell people what that is, or should I?
Go for it.
Okay, surveillance role players, as I understand it, are people that are hired to be actors, and they can do a number of things. They can come in and try to interrogate you without you realizing it. They can try to trick you. They can try to, apparently we'll see in some slides, maybe even falsify witness against you to frame you for a crime. So it sounds fairly innocuous at first. You think, oh, they're just actors, don't let people hurt your feelings if they come up and start acting, because a lot of people think about, like, at Occupy Wall Street, we would see people and they'd come down and they'd act kind of zany and you just ignore them. And, they would they try to discredit you or, do something, but they can get downright terrifying, because if they're doing things like what happened to poor Julian Assange, which I'll show you in the next coming up slide, if people are, because surveillance role players can also be honeypots and honey traps, and they can try to date you, or what some people call also spy cops. They can come up and try to play on your emotions and your trust. And then you get these people close to you, and they can do all sorts of things to frame you for crimes you didn't commit, or later on claim that you did things against them. So let's get into that.
Can we just back that up a second? Because I think it's really important. SC3, which is this company, is a leading provider of high-end mission support, consulting, and technology solutions to federal government and defense intelligence and civil markets, and to major corporations and non-profit organizations.
Oh, I didn't catch that, but yes.
Major corporations and non-profit organizations. The national security efforts reach across the intelligence community and the Department of Defense. So these are military contractors who are pimping themselves out to major corporations and non-profit organizations. Now, if you recall back to the H.B. Gary documents where they were plotting their infiltration and destruction of WikiLeaks, they were doing so in conjunction with the Bank of America. The Bank of America was sponsoring that project. So these teams of surveillance operatives, just as I explained when I showed you the chart that I put together about how the data flows down and up from the global network to these chumps on the ground, scumbags on the ground. I mean, let's call them what they are. I've got no problems calling them what they are. Scumbags on the ground. I said that they also outsource to corporations and explained how and why. And here we are with them in their own advertising, in their own job postings, bragging that that's exactly what they do. We work for the Department of Defense and major corporations. We work for the Department of Defense and non-profit organizations.
Yes. Did you see, if people go into the WikiLeaks files?
Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's okay.
The last half of that sentence, providing full life cycle operational and cyber support as well, and differentiated capabilities to meet our customers' challenging mission. And again, there's that word customer. So what they're doing is they're replicating the same model as the NSA and the intelligence agencies. The NSA and the intelligence agencies call themselves a business and call the people who they're giving data to customers. These private companies, same thing. They're a business for profit and they have customers. And the customer might be the Department of Defense or the customer might be the Bank of America.
Yes, I was going to say that if people go to the WikiLeaks files and they type in something to the effect of client list and Stratfor, there's a nice PDF that you can hit and it will show you a whole list of some of their clients, and Bank of America's in there and the Department of Homeland Security. And as I understand it, although you correct me if I'm wrong, is that, these third-party contractors gain access, because they're government contractors, they gain access to the NSA databases. But then, like you said, they can also pimp that information out to these corporations. So if anyone has a problem with you, or some rich guy, someone like, it could even be someone like who they found like Rose McGowan was being tracked by security agencies. What was it, Black Cube? I think that was not an American company, but still, even Jeffrey Epstein's rape victims were being stalked by security agencies. So, you could even be just a rape victim that offended some corporate CEO, and he can go get a paramilitary group that has access to the NSA database to hunt you down. Isn't that lovely?
Two other things I'd like to point out about this slide. The second paragraph, in addition to our government services area, SC3 provides cutting-edge competitive intelligence to strategic and strategic management consulting to commercial clients. And now we look on the left-hand side and we see the other results for surveillance role players. Surveillance role players for the I-State Truck Center, Interstate Trucking Center. Like, what the hell are they doing infiltrating the transport systems? Next one down, counterintelligence role player, secret, part-time for General Dynamics. General Dynamics, a weapons manufacturer. Next one
It
down,
seems like
surveillance team role player, team controller. A team controller is somebody who is in control of teams of these scumbag people on the ground in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Yes. I mean, it just seems like if you're a rich person, or you have anyone who has connections to the government or is rich, basically this is the way the elite now just suppress everyone if they want
So
to.
when they say in that second paragraph, cutting edge competitive intelligence, this is businesses going after other businesses, as well as businesses going after individuals.
Yes.
You know, we have this whole myth of the meritocracy that if you just work really hard and you become an entrepreneur, you can build a business and you can make a lot of money and everything will be fine. No, it won't be, because you can be crushed like an ant by, be it General Dynamics or be it, you know, SC3 on behalf of the Bank of America. They wipe out competition. That's what it's all about.
Sorry to interrupt.
And on a big scale, we see that happening with Kim.com. And that's exactly what it is. Kim.com was targeted because he had an extremely successful business that was threatening to major corporations because Kim.com's market share was so big. And he had the audacity to financially support WikiLeaks. And therefore, he was targeted, grossly targeted on an epic scale.
Yeah. I mean, think about people investing in the stock market. I mean, if you have an NSA database that's always going to give you insider trader information, you're always going to have the advantage. And I mean, I have a hard time believing that since these people are violating everyone's rights all over the place, that they're not doing economic espionage in every single possible direction. So you want me to keep going?
Absolutely.
Okay. Here we are again. I don't know if you want to keep talking about SC3. I don't know if there's anything new really that we haven't already covered, but
that's the same slide by the looks of it. So.
Okay, my eyes are a little bit bad, and let's see. Okay, experienced role player. What do you need? Basic qualifications. Experience as a role player supporting field exercises, map reading and navigational capability. Availability to work flexible hours on a part-time basis. Must meet the physical requirements. And what is that, like armed combat with the people that you break into their house? Let's see, physical requirements to be prepared for extensive walking, standing for extended periods of time. Must possess a valid U.S. driver's license and must disclose driving record, blah, blah, blah. It's the experience working in
experience working in Department of Defense, Special Operations, or Intelligence Community training environment highly desired.
Yes. Active secret security clearance. Now, here we go. Hiding unethical behavior with security clearance and then maybe classified documents. This is what we're seeing over and over again. I mean, why are these people allowed to classify or, have security clearance and it seems like things are being very compartmentalized. So only certain people at the top know exactly what the whole entire operation is. And it also seems like if they're doing things that are unethical or illegal, it's going into a little secret cachet that we are not privy to. Let's see, the ability to work as an independent contractor. Okay, so what else do we have? Oh, so I wanted to see, I was like, how much do these people get paid to be just absolute trash? Like, what are they getting paid? Like $3 million, $300,000 a year, like $100,000 a year? What is it? These people are doing this for roughly on average, $44,000 a year. It's like, so, I mean, it's like almost, I mean, not quite Walmart salary, but I mean, it's like they can just get.
Well, it looks like the bulk of them are getting paid significantly less than $44,000 a year. It looks like the bulk of them are at somewhere around $25,000 to $30,000 a year.
Like, I wonder if they're getting, government assistance like all the Walmart workers and living in the Walmart parking lot in between doing surveillance. Like, it's just ridiculous that people are selling out their own citizens for this amount of money. Not that a large amount of money would justify it, but I mean, it's amazing how life has become so cheap, and we have our own fellow citizens attacking our fellow citizens. It's just awful. Okay. So then these are the people I looked at, like reviews, people that how they feel about their job, because I was like wanted to understand the psychology. And then they said things: typical day at work, busy but plentiful. They're all upbeat about it. What I learned: keep your eyes on the target. I mean, what era are we in, and what country? I mean, this just seems so. This is like Stasi. I don't
It is
understand.
literally the Stasi.
And okay, management worthwhile, workplace culture agreeable, hardest part of the job, managing skill set, most enjoyable part of the job, getting along with coworkers. So they get to have a fun time. They're all little buddies while they're ruining your life. That's really lovely. And they give it a five-star rating. That's great. Okay, hit or miss. Surveillance operator. The reason I say hit or miss is that it is a part-time gig, because they want to do it full time. Okay, it is a physical job and a lot of walking, but it is fun. I mean, doesn't that just
Oh
sicken you?
God, this just gets worse.
I would have to say that it hits your inner child in you, with the observing people without them knowing you're watching, kind of like a spy mode.
The level of I'm sorry, it is mental illness in my opinion. The level of mental illness required to want to be paid for what is essentially a warped kind of voyeurism is
Yeah.
beyond me.
I just don't know how these people can not know what they're doing. I mean, these people, like you said, they're not passively just sneaking around and sneaking into your house and sneaking into your vehicles just to bring you flowers or just to see what you're doing and then go away. I mean, how can these people not understand that they may be part of like almost hit teams, kill chains? I mean, how can you sit there and day out stalk this many people and not think, hey, maybe someone's going to get hurt here and I'm partly responsible? So
Absolutely, because they might be gathering the intelligence, but then what will be done with that intelligence? That's the next question.
right, and there's so many
And
people
what
doing
ways will
this.
it be acted on? Okay, here we go. This
Here
is
we
going to
go.
get full on.
Okay, so surveillance role players can also be honeypots, and you do an excellent description of what a honeypot is. Do you want me to read this all, or should I let other people read this? It's kind of long.
No, I want to get into the icy watch versions.
Okay, here we
Yeah.
go. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to go to the WikiLeaks. What I found when I put in honeypot and honey trap was very disturbing. So this is from WikiLeaks. Basically, this is from Global Intelligence Files. This is Stratfor, which is, I understand, a CIA subcontractor, but I know they're a government subcontractor either way. And they have internal emails where they're talking about how Julian Assange was most likely framed for rape. And the way that they say this is, now, would we pay a couple of hoochies to have sex with him and get into legal trouble, for which, by the way, he is rightfully under threat of extradition? Would we do that? Hell yes. And then they say, well, the Kremlin would kill him. Well, there goes your Russiagate theory. If the Kremlin's going to kill, U.S. just set a honey trap, and he flew in like a dumbass. So they're basically saying whether or not they're the ones directly responsible, or they think that the government agencies are directly responsible. They're basically celebrating. And I don't know if people know what Stratfor is, but it billed itself originally, before the Global Intelligence Files came out, as sort of a forecasting journalism kind of empire. And what the Global Intelligence Files showed us, which were leaked emails that WikiLeaks published, was that actually Stratfor was functioning as an intelligence agency, and they're also called, I guess, like a private, almost like a private CIA, but they're a government subcontractor, and they have been heavily attacking people who are not just part of WikiLeaks, but people who are WikiLeaks supporters. So anyway, this, I think, is probably maybe the most important slide, because I want everyone to really understand this, that we have a government subcontractor talking about how most likely Julian Assange was framed for crimes he did not commit, and he may be now, this has resulted in him having his life, you know, stuck in the embassy for 7 years. He was tortured, and now they're going to try to extradite him. He's been isolated, and they may try to execute him. Now, they keep trying to heap on extra charges, but as you see how these security agencies operate, they just keep looking and looking and picking and making things up and framing people and, having false witness, surveillance role players creating false witness. So, it's a very dark, disturbing picture of what's happening globally here. It gets even worse because it turns out, look at all this. This is from your article, Susie, and you did a great, you have a great chart in your article, Freeing Julian Assange. And it talks about all the men in WikiLeaks who were getting framed for sex crimes. And then later on, the people who are most, in my opinion, most likely surveillance role players were having to conveniently retract the statements, but after the damage was done. So, what happens to Julian Assange after he spent 7 years, where he wasn't even charged with rape? He wasn't even charged. It was just, they said that there was an ongoing, he was indefinitely detained for an ongoing investigation, where even the rape victims were, one of them was saying, at least maybe both of them were saying, look, we don't, we didn't, this is not, it wasn't even a situation of rape. Like Sweden has an unusual system where, basically if a condom breaks, they're going to say you have to go get STD tested or something. But the story came out in the media before I think Julian Assange even had an opportunity to really respond to these women. And then it ended up getting the women ended up retracting their statements, but it didn't stop Sweden, it didn't stop the US, and it didn't stop the spy agencies and the UK from, chasing Julian Assange from country to country and stealing his finances and ruining his life and torturing him. And now this poor man who has done so much for the world, he's a hero, is being smeared constantly, and he may lose his life over this. So I'm gonna not cry, but it's horrible. And then I can say, Jacob Appelbaum is like a hero. Like he's a hero. I used to watch his videos all the time in Democracy Now!
Jacob Appelbaum is a known FBI target, is a known NSA target. In the Snowden NSA documents, Jacob's Torbridge server, which he hosted, was listed as an NSA target. And he is a known, guaranteed FBI target. And all of a sudden, he's a serial rapist. Julian Assange confirmed, literally from the Pentagon's own statements, issued statements saying that they were engaging in a manhunt of him prior to allegations of rape being leveled against him. Trevor Fitzgibbon, also told as a serial rapist, third WikiLeaks person to be branded as a serial rapist. And what was he working on? He was working with David Miranda and Glenn Greenwald on implementing a Snowden treaty to create countries that would be guaranteed safe havens for whistleblowers. And he was representing the country of Venezuela. His PR firm was representing the country of Venezuela. The country of Ecuador was representing Glenn Greenwald, Edward Snowden, and WikiLeaks and Julian Assange. Serial rapist.
What are the odds? All three.
What are the odds?
Times.
What are the odds that three of the highest level targets all just happen to be serial rapists, all of them?
It's absurd. And the thing is that he's won court cases. Trevor's another hero. And I wish I had people should look up that case. He has won court cases against this person. This person who was accusing him of rape had to retract her statements because there was just completely damning evidence that she had completely falsified her information. So it's not, so I just want everyone to understand that surveillance role player, you look at the title and you look at it maybe on, Craigslist or Indeed, and you just think, oh, actors. Well, don't let that bother you, Target. Just get over it. It's just a bunch of actors. It's not funny when they're framing you for crimes that could get you executed or put away in jail for the rest of your life. And I can even speak to it because people are coming to my work, and I work as a massage therapist. I've already said it before. And they were coming in and saying what a great job I was doing and doing really creepy stuff. And then they would go out and try to get me fired. And so, and they were doing it in teams, and they were asking me over and over again, all about Russia. And it's like, I know nothing about Russia. Sorry, I know you're whatever, but like, you're over there, but like, I don't know. And you're not, that's not even an issue. That's just a stupid red herring that they've invented so they can vilify people. But, excuse me for one second, I just got to grab something. Sorry, I got like a little emotional, so just tearing up a little. But anyway, all right. I don't know if you want to say anything more about this. It's just, it's horrible that
No,
these
it's good
things.
to go. Let's continue. I want to
Okay.
get to audience questions pretty soon.
Okay.
Roughly how
This
many
is
slides
huge.
have you got left?
Just a few more, like maybe about 10, but
Okay.
this
I'm
is
just gonna grab
huge.
some water. I'll be right back.
Okay. Well, you may want to speak to this though. During the IC Watch, what I found was that there is an instructor who teaches people role playing, and what she does is she's conducted honeypots and elicitation. And so there are some things called honeypots that have to do more with computers, but since this person is a role player instructor, what I think she's referring to is actually teaching people how to do honeypotting, which is what we were just referring to. And that is basically using, trying to approach targets and use sexuality to get close to targets to harm them. So I don't know if Susie's going to want to talk about this, but this was a huge find. I mean, I couldn't believe that people on IC Watch were actually um, running schools. I mean, basically prostitution schools. So, and not just prostitution schools. Sorry, I don't mean to be, insulting people that have controversial feelings about the sex industry, but this is different. This is evil work that these people are doing, where they're doing it for surveillance. They're hurting the targets. They're tricking people into relationships. I think Susie referred earlier about how spy cops have even gone into people's lives and impregnated these women who thought they were in real relationships, and it turned out that these people were just using them, and who knows, maybe even getting ready to frame them for crimes they didn't commit. Okay, so I'm almost done. I thought this was really interesting. This is another article that I think Susie had, and she said that honeypots, it was happening even to people who are climate scientists and tariff negotiators, which has to do with trade. Tariffs have to do with trade. And I was somebody who was a Stop TPP activist that talked about trade a lot. And I thought it was really interesting that even people who were dealing with trade issues were getting honeypotted. Over here, some of the things that they study, these security agencies study, is denial and deception. Over and over again, they're trained to deny, 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 deny. Did you just break into that house? No. Are you a honeypot? No. Did you just try to sabotage that car? No. So they're trained liars, and this is deeply disturbing because the security agency is deeply embedded in both of our media, which we are supposed to rely on for true information, but we have these people that specialize in denial and deception controlling a lot of our media. And then it's also particularly disturbing because when you try to hold these groups accountable, they're getting a pass. They're allowed to study denial and deception and lie about hurting people. Here we go, denial and deception. In fact, too bad Susie's not here, because this was really funny. She did a series called Decipher You, and it was an analysis of the Edward Snowden documents. And what she found, when she and Elizabeth Leah Voss sat down and analyzed some of the documents that Edward Snowden released, whistleblower documents. And what they found is that the director of Central Intelligence gives out denial and deception awards. Like, these guys even get awards for being complete absolute liars. Okay. Another thing, I didn't think this was legal, but here's a guy at the IC Watch, in the IC Watch CVs, and he's bragging about parallel construction, developed successful and processes to product parallel construction for classified analysis at the unclassified and law enforcement sensitive level. So what, for those of you that don't know what parallel construction is, it's basically they use illegal means to gain some kind of information, such as put cameras in your car or cameras in your house without your knowledge. and they found something on you. You put the toothpaste cap on the wrong way, or whatever it is, something stupid, and some technicality. And so what they'll do is, if they want to get you on something and you say something or do something wrong, they will try to, they can't use the evidence that they've gained illegally. So what they'll do is they'll try to build a case where they can entrap you, where you maybe repeat the same behavior, and then get you that way. But as I understand it, parallel construction is supposed to be illegal. So I can't believe this guy put this on his CV. But I'm kind of glad he did, because now we have proof. Another thing, we talked about PSYOPs. They love to infiltrate. So they're always infiltrating. And oh my gosh, Susie, I don't know how much more. Let's see. This is really important. I'm coming up on activists. So this really hits home. Susie, if you're there, please come on the stream. Okay, so
I'm here. I'm sorry. I'm having the time of my life listening to you and seeing all the comments. There is so many comments in chat in the social media platforms, the broadcasting platforms. It's amazing.
Good.
It's amazing.
People need to know this information. I had to overcome my horrible stage fright to do it, so thank you for appreciating. Okay, I'm kidding, but let's see. So this is really important. Look at this, Deputy Head of Operations and Resources. So this is an ethical specialist security company with innovative and pragmatic approach to mitigating risk. There it is again, risk and threats of relating to domestic extremism and direct action activists. So again, we are seen as, sorry, I just dropped something. We are seen as, extremists just for being activists. Now, because there are always these questions like, well, okay, so the military targets people, so they have these, operations and so forth. How do you know that you're a victim of this? Well, it's coming out all over the place. These people put in their CVs that they've been going after Occupy Wall Street, the Occupy Wall Street movement. I was down in the Occupy Wall Street movement. Am I one of these people that they're catching up in all of their wonderful operations? So here they are talking about, I'll try to go through these really quickly, but Occupy Wall Street, here we go again. Gathered information about members of Occupy Wall Street, successfully exposed several key members who are planning direct actions against the Harbor Authority. Okay, let's see. Here's somebody who's monitoring and developing threat assessments for protests and fringe organizations such as sovereign citizens. What? What is she talking about? Sovereign citizens? Is she talking about like the water protectors? Or is she talking about everybody? Not that it even makes a difference. It's horrible. Here we go. Let's see. Provided analysis of breaking tactical events, particularly related to global and domestic terrorism, protests. Okay, so there was another slide in here, but I don't know where it went. I think that's pretty much it. There's another slide that I had from WikiLeaks that talks about how Stratfor, I think you guys could find it maybe, but it was about how Stratfor was saying that left-wing psycho activists deserve to be covertly stalked, and that, basically it's their right to do this to us. So put in activist in the WikiLeaks search and put in Stratfor and see if you can find it, particularly like left-wing. It's so funny, just as a little aside, that right now they're trying to portray all of the WikiLeaks supporters as right-wing, because just a few years ago, these security agencies were actually calling us left-wing psychos. So they don't really care. They just want to discredit us, just like they said in the operation manual earlier. Finally, this is the end of my presentation. I had hundreds of slides. I had to pare it down. And I just want to say—
scroll it up a little bit.
How do I scroll up?
Can you click on the side and hit your up arrow? We just can't see the title, but we can see the picture.
I don't know how to do that. This thing, my computer just acted weird, and I'm so sorry, I can't do it. Basically, it says thank you.
But that on the left-hand side is MC McGrath.
Yes.
That is basically the genius who discovered all of this intelligence community, this curriculum vitae data on LinkedIn. And he also had to move to Berlin and was living in exile because he himself became targeted by the intelligence community.
Wow.
And of course, Julian Assange.
Yeah. I mean, the slide basically says thank you. It says thank you to both of them. I think MC McGrath, you're amazing. And you were so young when you did this. I mean, I'm an older woman. I just think you're brilliant. How did you even, in your young mind, even know how to do all of this? You're great. And of course, Julian Assange, you were just like the original. I mean, you broke the frontier. Sorry, I can't speak. I'm getting emotional, but he really broke the frontier of whistleblower journalism. I mean, on such a grand scale. He used his technological skills to protect sources, and I can't thank him enough.
And published fearlessly.
And published fearlessly. Thank you, Julian. We will fight for you, free Assange.
Okay, can you stop the screen share?
Okay. Stop share.
And let's move into Q&A.
I'm in my dark
Okay, everybody, I'm going to start trawling through literally thousands of comments on the YouTube channels. Anybody, can we have our Facebook admins please message me any questions from the Facebook, because I can't see that right now. Anyone who wants to ask questions on Twitter, just tag hashtag 1versus5i. But I'll start trying to work my way through the YouTube. Elizabeth, you've done an amazing job tonight. Absolutely brilliant. And do you have any final thoughts for us while I track down some of these questions?
I want everyone to go out there. We don't have enough people doing this. We need journalists. We need people. We know that the mainstream media has been infiltrated. We see it with all of the security agencies. And whether they're all in there or just influencing it, we know that we can't get any kind of real information out there. So I'm kind of drafting everyone. I'm saying, I'm someone that barely knew how to type like in my later years, and if I can come this far, so can everyone. I just want everyone to go to the WikiLeaks documents and start combing for information and posting it and publishing it. I want people to go to IC Watch and assist me and find even more damning evidence. I want us to build cases. I want us to take people to court. I want us to have a public inquiry in front of Congress. I cannot see how our planet can continue this way with half the population spying on the other half and doing it with impunity. So yeah. So anyway, I'm trying to think of anything else. I didn't know I'd have to sum it all up at the end, and so I'm kind of nervous. But I want a call to action. I want everybody to read original whistleblower documents and really get the information out there and overcome your stage fright like I have, and do live streams and do everything in your power to help free Assange, because he's really the test case. He's the test case for our freedom of press, and we have to fight for him, not just because he's an amazing person who has done incredible work, and I just appreciate him as on a even though I don't know him on a human level. We need to preserve our freedom. So I don't know if there's anything else you wanted me to say, but
that's amazing. There is a lot of love for you in the chats right now. A lot of people saying great job and you're amazing and you've done so well and thank you so much and go Liz.
Thank you. I'm trying not to cry. It's been really hard.
There is a humongous amount of support for you here right now.
It was very hard getting up in front of the camera, so that means the world to me. Thank you, everyone.
It is so hard. I know. I went through years of doing everything I could to not be in front of a camera, to not have to speak publicly. And certainly on this topic, I mean, who wants to sit around and talk about this stuff, But there's a real obligation and a real responsibility to pass on the information that you learn to other people, because it does make a difference. Like when I had experience, when I was so dismayed by what was happening to me, and I didn't understand it at all because I hadn't been an activist. I didn't have the slightest clue that this is what would happen for engaging in what's supposed to be protected democratic rights to dissent. But when more experienced activists than me started giving me information and telling me, hey, this happens and this is what they do and this is how they do it and this is who they do it to and blah, 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 I was just like, holy crap, the pieces started dropping into place. And like you said earlier, it actually makes you feel like it gives you mental comfort to know that you're not alone, that you're not the only person going through this, you're not the first person going through this. There are people who've been targeted for nearly their entire lives. And there are people who were targeted as children because of who their parents were or what the parents were involved in, and who are targeted and monitored throughout their entire lives. It is completely unjust, and it's not okay. I keep saying it's not okay because it's not okay. It is a total violation of every promise of democracy that we're told that we have, from elementary school on. We're told that this was what makes our nations better than other nations, and then we discover that it doesn't exist. Democracy does not exist. Let me just say this again and in no uncertain terms in case you missed it earlier. But this is this is the reality. The Western world is ruled by a transnational military dictatorship. It does not matter who you vote for. They don't give a shit who you vote for, because whoever you vote for is going to be gone in a few years. And the transnational intelligence data cabal is not going to be gone in a few years. They're not going to be gone in a few decades. They do not care. If you read an article I wrote called Glenn Greenwald and the Irrelevance of Electoral Politics, I wrote in 2014. I referenced it briefly in a different sense last week when I was talking about risk management. But if you read that article, you'll see an NSA document where an NSA instructor is asked, does the NSA care if a country swings from left wing to right wing? And they say, no, they don't care because it doesn't affect their military intelligence sharing relationships and their partner relationship with that country. Whether they have a left wing government or a right wing government, it doesn't change the military intelligence relationship of the country. And when you strip away voting and democracy and all this reality TV political crap, I mean, just stop and think for a second. If politics is a farce, a reality TV show, and the military has supremacy before, during, and after election cycles, then think about how many hours every single day are being consumed, not just by media, but by people who are watching media, on endlessly debating politics, on fighting about politics, on the factionalizing that happens around politics. And behind that, there is a military dictatorship that is laughing at all of us because we are distracted looking at the sideshow of politics. We're not looking at the control structure. This is the control structure. Everything that we've been discussing. Elizabeth's presentation was largely about the goons on the ground that are going around intimidating and harassing and destroying, frankly, targets, because they're the coalface. They're what we see and what we deal with as targeted people. But behind them, the paymasters, the people paying them their piddly $40,000 a year to ruin people's lives, behind them is a transnational, meaning across borders, across countries, not confined within America, not confined within New Zealand. Transnational, globalized, international control structure. These are the people who we need to focus on, need to talk about, need to educate people about, and need to fight against. And next week, I'm going to get into what I promised to get into from the outset, which is the way that they have control, they've taken control of the very fabric of society, of technology, of education, of economics, of you name it, every sector of society is controlled by that transnational military dictatorship. It's not controlled by politicians. It's not controlled by who you vote for. It is controlled by the military industrial complex. And I'm going to show you a lot of evidence about that next week. Okay, so many questions. I don't even really know where to start. Several people I've seen asking how can they protect themselves from this. That is a whole show in and of itself.
Yes.
Because it is such a big topic. I can't just say use Tor, use Tails. Everything has implications. Everything has caveats. Everything has things that you need to know before you engage in. If you're looking for just simple, quick fix solutions, use an encrypted email service, use an encrypted text message provider. Is it going to help you? No, it's not. If you're individually targeted, they're going to own your device whether or not you have encrypted email or an encrypted text messaging service. But they're going to have, as Snowden always says, they're going to have to target you individually. They're going to have to apply resources into targeting you individually. It does defeat the mass surveillance aspect of it so far, at least insofar as where there isn't actual backdoors into those technologies, which there may well be with many of them. How to protect yourself
May I say something?
against this is literally an entire 3-hour show, and I will add that to my list.
Yeah.
So next week we'll get into how they have seized control of each aspect of society. But in a future stream, we'll get into how to protect yourself, or at least what knowledge I have accrued, what little knowledge I have accrued on that subject. I'm more than happy to share with you.
I was going to say one thing really quickly to that. One thing we could consider is looking at the classes that they take. You know, how do they protect themselves? So, but
yeah, that is another part of it.
okay.
Oh, to the person who's saying, Aroha nui from Aotearoa Kia Kaha. Kia ora, TJ and Sepis. I really appreciate actually hearing from people from New Zealand. He's speaking in Māori to me, New Zealand Māori, an Indigenous language. Kia ora too for that. I appreciate that feedback. Okay. Wow, the chat is just moving so fast. I'm finding it almost impossible to keep up with it. Diana Pythia wants to know, is there a connection to a Zionist agenda? You know what? I co-founded NZ for Gaza. I am pro-Palestine. I'm anti-apartheid. I don't care which country it is that's imposing an apartheid regime. I am fundamentally, ideologically anti-apartheid, which puts me on the anti-Zionist side of that fight. But there's two sides to every coin, okay? So on one side of the coin, as I described like from the outset of the stream and the previous stream, US-Israel has a special two-eye, very top-tier intelligence sharing relationship. And obviously the funding of the Israeli regime by the US, et cetera, is highly problematic. Obviously, Israeli spyware is very advanced, and it has been shared with really sick regimes like Saudi Arabia, just to name one, but there's many others. I would describe Israel as mercenary in its cyber capabilities. Cyber warfare it's not cyber terrorism or anti-terrorism. It's just plain and simple cyber warfare. But the other side of that coin is that I also see Israel the same way that, or the current Israeli regime and their current position on these things, as being much like any like totalitarian like dictatorship. I mean, I know that they'll say they're the only democracy in the Middle East or whatever, but let's get real. They're run by a military, military complex. You strip away like who you vote for and the political theater of politics in Israel, and you're going to find exactly the same military dictatorship that exists right across the Western countries. This is the thing. There is no difference. Okay, there is no difference. When they tell you, oh, Putin is a dictator and Russia is a totalitarian state or whatever the hell, New Zealand is a totalitarian state run by a military dictatorship. New Zealand is supposedly the most peaceful, safe, transparent, non-corrupt country in the world. Bullshit. New Zealand sells its own citizens' data to a foreign country. New Zealand is engaged in industrial level treason against its own citizenry. There is no different. The truth is there is no least corrupt, most peaceful, most transparent country in the world. These scales don't fucking mean anything, because when the least corrupt country is really freaking corrupt, and when the least transparent country is not at all transparent, and when the most peaceful country is engaged in war crimes in Afghanistan. The spy agencies are supporting drone assassination and targeted killing programs around the world, and is engaged in outsourcing to private intelligence companies to stalk and destroy their own citizens. What does it mean to say that they're a peaceful country? It means nothing. It's a bullshit label, and it's a bullshit scale. So Israel, I see them as like really, like the Zionist regime, I see as really, really terrible. But I also kind of see them as like the same as everybody else. And that's why I keep saying this is a transnational problem. Like every single freaking country, just about every single, I mean, maybe not Iceland, maybe not, oh God, what is it? The somewhere in like Central Asia, like not Nepal, but next to Nepal. Anyways, maybe there's 2 or 3 exceptions on this planet, but I'm telling you right now, there's easily over 100 that are military dictatorships with a veneer of politics slapped over the top like lipstick on the pig. And we keep falling for their bullshit. Why do you think these like election cycles like run, for a year and a half out of every 4 years? We're pushed into this whole thing over and over again. It's a giant sideshow designed to keep us distracted, designed so that we can't. And there's people, the thing is, we say that people are waking up, and to a degree that's true. People are waking up to the problems that we face, but they still haven't quite got there with the root cause of the problems, because the root cause of the problems isn't like secret society X who's been around for 500 years or like whatever the hell. For me, the root cause of the problems is the systems that have been created, the control systems that have been created by whoever the hell's at the top, which gives them the power and the ability to maintain their control over the planet. You wipe out their control systems and they can't do shit. They cannot do shit. So that is personally what I'm going after. I personally want to go after those control systems which are exploiting the entire planet. And that again takes me back to what I said earlier about no bomb can be dropped on this planet without an intelligence agency. So if you don't like bombs, and most people don't, and you don't like war, and most people don't, then you got to start thinking about how that war is being perpetuated. That war is being perpetuated by intelligence, data, targeting systems. That is all coming from the intelligence agencies. Propaganda is talking about inverted totalitarianism. Yeah, I've read enough Chris Hedges to know all about that, and I'm on board with it too. I totally agree. Someone keeps asking, how do they keep the perpetrators quiet? Well, there have been a couple of perpetrator like whistleblowers who've been engaged in these targeting programs, and they instantly get targeted. They just go on the shit list themselves. Boom, they're on the watch list. Oh, now they're the ones being surveilled. Now they're the ones going through it. So same old. Why do people like participate in the Nazi regime? They didn't want to be targeted by the Nazi regime. I mean, this is it. They became collaborators. Everybody has to make that choice. I can go and be a software development manager doing some mindless shit and earning a couple $100,000 a year, or I can be broke and live in exile and never know if I'm going to be safe over country to live in, but I can be fighting for freedom for humanity. I made that choice. Every single person has to make that choice. Those perpetrators have to make that choice. Those perpetrators could band together and maybe do something about what's going on. Everybody has to make that choice. Every individual on this planet has to make that choice. So waking people up to the problems is step 1, but step 2 is actually doing something about them. This entire campaign, all these events are about doing something about it. For all the people tell me I'm brave and I'm wonderful and they love and respect my work, support my work. That's what it comes down to. If you love it and you respect it, support it. Get on board. Go check out the website. Get on the Discord and become a part of our team. 1versus5i.com/Discord, and you can work with me. You love me, I'm brave and wonderful, come and work with me. Design a couple of graphics, edit a video. It's not a big deal. It's not like you have to join some like hardcore resistance underground movement. Actually, you can come and just like send a couple of tweets now and then, or just do some small contribution. We don't need to ask much from everyone. We just need everyone to do a little bit. And if everyone does a little bit, it adds up to a lot. We're not asking you to give away your entire lives. We're not asking you to, follow us off the edge of a cliff. We're just saying, hey, give a little bit, support in whatever ways that you can that aren't too taxing on you, that aren't too difficult for you. And we can make some real change here. Everybody who goes and gives $5 towards the legal campaign, it's a huge deal. It's a huge deal when it adds up, when hundreds and hundreds of people, or thousands and thousands of people do it. That's when we have real impact. So I think everybody giving a small bit, but doing it in large numbers is the key to success in this. And absolutely spreading that awareness, learning to see through the charades of what the media wants us to talk about today, where the media wants our attention to be on today, and instead returning your attention over and over and over to the control systems that support the international military dictatorship that is running the world. And we undermine those people, we actually will save a few million lives, for real.
Susie?
Yeah.
I was going to say something too, which I know this is why you're doing the stream, because your case is coming up, but I really want to appeal to everyone and say, do everything you can to support Susie's case. It is so important. It is a landmark case. It will set a precedent, an international precedent. I want Susie to win her case so badly, not just because she has been violated, but in addition, she's winning it for all of us, because it will open the door for all of us to start prosecuting these people. So please, if you have to, take her donation form that she has. One thing that I'm thinking of doing is or I started to do, is photocopy it. And if if you can't get it out through social media, or you've exhausted all your friends on social media to donate, like, go door to door, do whatever, check the laws in your local area, make sure you're allowed to do that. But sit outside at grocery stores, do whatever you can to educate people about this issue, and to explain to them that even though Susie's in New Zealand and say you're in another country, this will be a landmark case, and we all need to get behind it, not just with our activism and raising awareness, but also, unfortunately, lawyers, they cost a lot of money, and I'm sure a lot of these lawyers are doing even like free work for her. But I mean, they have to be able to put gas in their car and just get to where they're going and file a lot of paperwork. And these security agencies try to bleed you dry of your resources. So please, I don't mean to sound like an infomercial, but please do everything you can to support Susie. It's the most important thing right now, and along with freeing Julian Assange.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd just like to say too that Julian was a huge supporter of my work, a huge supporter of my work, and a huge support to me personally. And he would be watching these streams, I can tell you that for free. I'm not saying that for self-promotion. I'm saying that because he watched my Deciphuge streams, which were examining the inner workings of the NSA. He focused his work on the same power and control structures that this movement is targeting. And the other movements that I've launched, like the anti-spy bill campaign, just as one example, and Decipher You as well. This is his thing. And the reason this is his thing is because he knows that these guys are the baddies, and he has been personally victimized by them. You take out these control systems I'm talking about, and you do free Julian Assange, because these agencies are who have been infiltrating and sabotaging and smearing and persecuting WikiLeaks and jailing, torturing, and killing and jailing Julian Assange. And they absolutely are killing him. They're doing it in slow motion, but they're doing it. So this is a continuation of the fight. And should anything ever happen to me, other people need to continue the fight. I knew nothing 8 years ago. I knew nothing. Everything that I know now is a combination of studying and reading hundreds of documents, thousands of documents, tens of thousands of documents, and packaging and regurgitating that information, and put it along with my own thoughts, my own experiences, and sharing it. My earliest articles sucked. Like, I was seeing important things and trying to write about them, but I had no skills. And through practice over time, every time I put out another article, it's like a little bit better than the one before, and a little bit better than the one before. I started writing in end of 2011. By 2014, WikiLeaks was picking up on and sharing my work while I was still in New Zealand promoting my articles, because that, it took me about 3 years to get to a standard where I could write well enough that I could be shared by WikiLeaks. 2015, I was a bit better than 2014. 2016, I was a bit better than 2015. It all comes down to putting in the time, putting in the effort, and really, really caring about this. Really understanding the deep connection to all of the problems that we face tie back to this. Caitlin Johnston's been doing some amazing writing in the last couple of days. It's not the first time for her either, about how the Pentagon is the biggest polluter on the planet, how the military is the biggest polluter on the planet, how having a climate march or a climate movement doesn't mean shit unless you tackle the fact that war destroys the environment, that the military-industrial complex is the biggest polluter and destroys the environment. Every single social ill or problem that we have, one way or another, ties back to this same control structure. And that's why it's that control structure that we have got to keep foremost in our mind, focus our work and our activism around, focus our awareness building campaigns around, and to whatever degree we still can, try to hold them accountable in the legal system. So that's what this campaign's about. I am going to end the stream now a little early, because it would be great for me to actually get some sleep for once in my life. It's 20 to 6 in the morning here, and my voice does start to give out after about 2.5 hours of streaming. I want to thank the more than 400 people on YouTube who've been watching us. I want to thank the God knows how many thousand people on Facebook and DLive and Periscope who've been watching us. I want to thank the incredible amount of people who've live tweeted the stream. And I want to thank all of you for doing one of two things, either going to oneversus5i.com/donate and giving $1, $5, $10, whatever you can, or taking that link and spreading it around as many people as possible. Even them reading the Go Get Funding page, the donate page, there's so much information in that page. There's links, there's videos, stuff that people need to see whether or not they donate. So that's my parting request, is that you guys take those links and you spread them far and wide, and you educate. You do the job that the media will never do. You teach people about this control structure and why it's so important that we resist it, because this is true resistance. Resisting some reality TV politician is not true resistance. Going up against these control structures is true resistance. This is fighting for the emancipation of humanity as a whole, all of us. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to my amazing tech team who have put the stream together. Everybody on this campaign is volunteers. They're beautiful people who care and who donate their skills, and you can join us, oneversus5i.com/Discord. Thank you so much. I will be back next week with another episode of Opening the Five Eyes, Exposing the Spies. Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Susie. I'm an activist and a journalist from Auckland, New Zealand. For years, I've worked on controversial issues like the corruption of our intelligence agencies. I was severely targeted as a result of my work. This led to my articles being amplified by the world's most accomplished publisher. In 2016, I made a documentary about how and why I was forced to leave my country. I have now sought refuge in Russia, and my situation has become public.
On 882 6PR, the voice of Perth.
It's 12:30 right now, and Tony with you, and I'm really happy we finally got through to Moscow to my friend over there, Susie Dawson.
You're listening to a 95BFM podcast.
Susie Dawson is a Kiwi activist and journalist who worked as a member of Occupy Auckland's media team at that time. Now, 5 years later, and following involvement in GCSB and TPPA opposition, she's seeking asylum in Russia, alleging she has been spied on, harassed and threatened by the police.
Welcome back to The Wire. Now, finally on the show today, last week it was announced that Susie Dawson will be the new leader of the Internet Party.
Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest with us. It's Susie Dawson. She's an activist, journalist, former party leader and current president of the Internet Party.
Susie Dawson, an activist and citizen journalist currently seeking asylum in Moscow. Susie has written extensively on surveillance and the deep state and claims it's not safe for her in New Zealand.
My name is Craig Tuck. I'm a lawyer from New Zealand. I act in the area of international human rights. I act for Susie Dawson, along with a group of other lawyers throughout the world who act for journalists and dissenters in high-profile cases, including the case of Julian Assange. As far back as 2012, Susie has been trying to warn New Zealanders and other citizens around the world about state targeting and surveillance of citizens and the methods being used to do it.
Surveillance in New Zealand is now so widespread, it's not an issue of police going and getting a warrant and doing an investigation and then it all coming out in court. The vast majority of the surveillance that's undertaken is never going to be aired in a courtroom. And by that I'm talking about cell phone technologies, I'm talking about lawful interception is the term that the companies that do this like to use. There is a corporation in Wellington, New Zealand called SSI Corp, and you can Google them and you can look at their website. And on their website, they're so good as to explain at length exactly what they do and how legal it is for them to do it. And essentially, they can intercept virtually any communication. If they have someone at range, they can hear your actual conversations, but also through cell phones, they can essentially turn them into microphones and hear any conversation that's had within vicinity. They can see your text messages, they can see what photos are on your phone, they can see what files are on your phone, they can read your emails, they can just intercept all kinds of information.
Any intelligence service in the world that has significant funding and a real technological research team can own that phone the minute it connects to their network. As soon as you turn it on, it can be theirs. They can turn it into a microphone, they can take pictures from it, they can take the data off of it. But it's important to understand that these things are typically done on a targeted basis.
Not only was Susie essentially blowing a whistle on state-level spying, she was naming the precise entities that years later it would be proven had in fact been doing it.
And the fact that these are private corporations that are doing it should be really concerning to us. The crowd that they outsourced it to was TCIL, which was, I believe, Thompson and Clark Investigations Limited. The state is contracting a private company to surveil you. To me, that's really immoral, absolutely immoral.
Some 6 years later, in December 2018, an official State Services Commission report confirmed that New Zealand government agencies had been employing Thompson and Clark Investigations Limited to target New Zealand citizens. This is a private company that had essentially been instructed by state agencies and departments to spy on citizens.
More than a dozen police staff are under investigation for passing sensitive information to the private investigators Thompson and Clark.
Thompson and Clark. Security firm Thompson and Clark.
Thompson and Clark.
Thompson and Clark.
So Thompson and Clark, aren't some of them old police officers?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so does that explain the relationship and the free flow of information? Doesn't it actually seem a bit crass?
Well, at the end of the day, I guess what I trust is people's intent.
The report identifies perhaps inappropriately close relationships, morning teas paid for by Thompson and Clark, invitations to go out for drinks. Were there other companies identified where you inappropriately gave them information, or just Thompson and Clark?
There are a myriad of security companies who inquire of police every day. For instance, insurance security.
But that's not my question. People listening to this will think, hey, Thompson and Clark were getting stellar, top shelf, gold star treatment from the police. Why? Do you treat other security firms the same as you were treating this one? Yeah. How do you seriously think it looks to members of the public listening to this?
Thompson and Clark hasn't just been paid by the government to spy on Greenpeace and earthquake claimants in Christchurch. Tonight, Checkpoint can reveal the controversial security firm has been also monitoring the activities of another 3 activist groups in Northland, Coromandel and Wellington, and the activities of at least 1 further claimant.
Susie has been involved at the very highest levels, with people facing charges from prosecutions coming out of the Eastern District Court of Virginia in the United States. There are more prosecutions to follow of currently unnamed persons. Importantly, information will be coming out in the months to come that will provide transparency and clarity and lead to accountability. Suppression and prosecution of dissenters can't be allowed in New Zealand or elsewhere. That's why Susie's team is launching the hashtag 1versus5i campaign, and with your help can achieve some important victories for democracy and for each and every one of us.
Hi, my name is Susie. I'm an activist and a journalist from Auckland, New Zealand. For years, I've worked on controversial issues like the corruption of our intelligence agencies. I was severely targeted as a result of my work. This led to my articles being amplified by the world's most accomplished publisher. In 2016, I made a documentary about how and why I was forced to leave my country. I have now sought refuge in Russia, and my situation has become public.
On 882 6PR, the voice of Perth.
It's 12:30 right now, and Tony with you, and I'm really happy we finally got through to Moscow to my friend over there, Susie Dawson.
You're listening to a 95BFM podcast.
Susie Dawson is a Kiwi activist and journalist who worked as a member of Occupy Auckland's media team at that time. Now, 5 years later, and following involvement in GCSB and TPPA opposition, she's seeking asylum in Russia, alleging she has been spied on, harassed and threatened by the police.
Welcome back to The Wire. Now, finally on the show today, last week it was announced that Susie Dawson will be the new leader of the Internet Party.
Welcome to the Jimmy Dore Show. We have a special guest with us. It's Susie Dawson. She's an activist, journalist, former party leader and current president of the Internet Party.
Susie Dawson, an activist and citizen journalist currently seeking asylum in Moscow. Susie has written extensively on surveillance and the deep state and claims it's not safe for her in New Zealand.
My name is Craig Tuck. I'm a lawyer from New Zealand. I act in the area of international human rights. I act for Susie Dawson, along with a group of other lawyers throughout the world who act for journalists and dissenters in high-profile cases, including the case of Julian Assange. As far back as 2012, Susie has been trying to warn New Zealanders and other citizens around the world about state targeting and surveillance of citizens and the methods being used to do it.
Surveillance in New Zealand is now so widespread, it's not an issue of police going and getting a warrant and doing an investigation and then it all coming out in court. The vast majority of the surveillance that's undertaken is never going to be aired in a courtroom. And by that I'm talking about cell phone technologies. I'm talking about lawful interception is the term that the companies that do this like to use. There is a corporation in Wellington, New Zealand called SSI Corp. And you can Google them and you can look at their website. And on their website, they're so good as to explain at length exactly what they do and how legal it is for them to do it. And essentially, they can intercept virtually any communication. If they have someone at range, they can hear your actual conversations, but also through cell phones, they can essentially turn them into microphones and hear any conversation that's had within vicinity. They can see your text messages, they can see what photos are on your phone, they can see what files are on your phone, they can read your emails, they can just intercept all kinds of information.
Any intelligence service in the world that has significant funding and a real technological research team can own that phone the minute it connects to their network. As soon as you turn it on, it can be theirs. They can turn it into a microphone, they can take pictures from it, they can take the data off of it. But it's important to understand that these things are typically done on a targeted basis.
Not only was Susie essentially blowing a whistle on state-level spying, she was naming the precise entities that years later it would be proven had in fact been doing it.
And the fact that these are private corporations that are doing it should be really concerning to us. The crowd that they outsourced it to was TCIL, which was, I believe, Thompson and Clark Investigations Limited. The state is contracting a private company to surveil you. To me, that's really immoral. Absolutely immoral.
Some 6 years later, in December 2018, an official State Services Commission report confirmed that New Zealand government agencies had been employing Thompson and Clark Investigations Limited to target New Zealand citizens. This is a private company that had essentially been instructed by state agencies and departments to spy on citizens.
More than a dozen police staff are under investigation for passing sensitive information to the private investigators Thompson and Clark.
Thompson and Clark. Security firm Thompson and Clark.
Thompson and Clark.
Thompson and Clark.
So Thompson and Clark, aren't some of them old police officers?
Yes, they are.
Okay, so does that explain the relationship and the free flow of information? Doesn't it actually seem a bit crass?
Well, at the end of the day, I guess what I trust is people's intent.
The report identifies perhaps inappropriately close relationships, morning teas paid for by Thompson and Clark, invitations to go out for drinks. Were there other companies identified where you inappropriately gave them information, or just Thompson and Clark?
There are a myriad of security companies who inquire of police every day. For instance, insurance security.
But that's not my question. People listening to this will think, hey, Thompson and Clark were getting stellar, top shelf, gold star treatment from the police. Why? Do you treat other security firms the same as you were treating this one? Yeah. How do you seriously think it looks to members of the public listening to this?
Thompson and Clark hasn't just been paid by the government to spy on Greenpeace and earthquake claimants in Christchurch. Tonight, Checkpoint can reveal the controversial security firm has been also monitoring the activities of another 3 activist groups in Northland, Coromandel and Wellington, and the activities of at least 1 further claimant.
Susie has been involved at the very highest levels, with people facing charges from prosecutions coming out of the Eastern District Court of Virginia in the United States. There are more prosecutions to follow of currently unnamed persons. Importantly, information will be coming out in the months to come that will provide transparency and clarity and lead to accountability. Suppression and prosecution of dissenters can't be allowed in New Zealand or elsewhere. That's why Susie's team is launching the hashtag 1versus5i campaign, and with your help can achieve some important victories for democracy and for each and every one of us.